Hello, friends. Join me as we dive into My Duke Won't Die. Make sure to subscribe and let's dive in. Someone screams, warning the young lady that they're heading straight for her. The girl realizes that this life, where she can barely make ends meet, is weighing on her more and more. Added to this is her background, which has even barred her from entering the capital. All of this combined has long since worn her out. The girl instantly rushes at the monster and effortlessly cuts through its skin, reaching the core. After this, the monster freezes forever, and the young lady only curses in irritation. Her name is Ella Rain, and she is a monster hunter. Suddenly, the girl realizes that just 3 years ago, she was an ordinary otaku living in South Korea. She hits the monster again and screams why the hell she is even doing something like that in this damned place. The girl screams that she hates all this because she doesn't even have a chance to see her favorite. Then she wonders how she even ended up here. The other hunters whisper that the girl is acting strange again. Ella realizes she's entered the world of a novel she once read. Its title is The End of the Abyss. Readers can be roughly divided into several types. Some follow the plot, others are captivated by the universe itself. And for some, pure pleasure is the most important thing. After finishing the novel, the girl honestly admitted that she read it for the characters' looks. She looked at the beautiful cover and wondered how such perfection could even exist. And it was thanks to this guy that she reached the finale. Gerard Acellanos is the protagonist of The End of the Abyss and the crown prince of his world. He tried by any means possible to win the heart of the Duke's daughter, Athelia, choosing very peculiar methods. He insidiously plunged everyone she loved into eternal sleep and then consoled her, gradually winning her favor. Simply put, he's a handsome asshole. And even though he's crazy, that doesn't change the fact that he's just a character in a book. The girl was always curious about how she would feel if she saw him in person, and whether he would be even more attractive in reality. Now she realizes she should have formulated her thoughts more precisely. She definitely didn't want to end up in this world for real. The girl asks the worker what exactly he said. He replies that this is a center for selling monster paraphernalia, and it is run by the imperial family, so there is no point in being rude here. In response, the girl forcefully puts the horn on the floor and asks how many of these she brought. Kevin replies that it has 3 horns. The girl immediately emphasizes that it does 3 of them. She then asks if he is really going to give them only 3 gold pieces, or if he would rather go into eternal sleep. She notes that the number of hunters has doubled, and the number of those who bring back first-level attributes without scratches has increased 6-fold. The girl adds that on the black market, she would get the same 3 gold coins for one such thing. Kevin is outraged that the black market is banned, and even if it's level 1, it's just whore, whose horn is rarely used. The young lady smiles and says that he has a talent for talking nonsense, and it turns out that monsters are now judged by demand, not by risk. Then the price of Edel's skin could rise 5-fold due to high demand. The guy is at a loss and whispers in the room that the girl is at it again. The heroine notes that Kevin is concerned about the level, but if demand is high, it makes sense to hunt easy prey, forgetting about first-level monsters. She asks where exactly she's wrong, but the guy remains silent. When asked again, he only replies fearfully that he's listening. At that moment, the girl points a gun at him and warns him that hunters don't just fight, and if he allows himself to say such words again, she will show him a real monster. Then she asks again the price for the horns. The guy replies, 7 gold pieces. The girl takes the money and says it's just great. As she leaves, she notes that the place is not bad. She adds that she will become a regular customer, since it is impossible to negotiate with the black market. The young man wishes her a quick meeting, and the girl leaves. On the street, she runs into a colleague. It's a monster hunter named Mariah Wayne. He wants to know how much she got. The girl replies that it's 7 gold coins, and he exclaims in shock, because they only gave him 3. Rain explains that he simply agrees to everything, but the guy assures that it is not about the imperial family. The girl shrugs and asks what the difference is. She's surprised that people here are divided into classes, even though everyone is the same. If they want respect and admiration, let them send reinforcements to the border. Maybe they'll come to their senses when the monsters take over the country. Wayne just chuckles at her jokes. He reminds her that the palace is protected by Acellanos' blessing. The girl replies that even a person like her could become a monster. In the end, she still won't meet her favorite, and she doesn't understand why she even came here. She thinks her fantastic love might fade, though it will surely flare up again when they meet. The guy doesn't understand what she's talking about. The girl says that he doesn't need to know. and decides to go home and eat some meat. The young man asks her to wait, realizing she always says that. After 3 years, he still hasn't understood her thoughts. Meanwhile, in the palace, someone comes to His Highness and asks if he called him. It turns out to be Duke Clive Winterlock. The Emperor announces that he has a mission for him. The girl understands that she has been lying sick for several days in a cramped, one-room apartment. She struggled to keep her mind under control as she felt the heat burning through her. When she barely opens her eyes, a strange man approaches her. He asks if she can hear him. The girl, shocked, realizes she's in an unfamiliar place next to a bald old man. Rain suddenly gets up and asks where she is and if this is a dream. The man is surprised because he hadn't seen her for 4 days and was worried. He admits that he thought she was eaten by monsters, and the girl is amazed at how familiar this word is with reality. She gets out of bed, and the man asks her to lie down a little longer. But the girl suddenly jumps up, thinking that everything around is an illusion, and this world cannot be the end of the abyss. Suddenly, a huge monster appears in front of her, and she freezes in horror. The monster throws her back with a blow, and the pain proves that this is not a dream. The girl frantically searches for something to stop the monster with, and notices an axe nearby. Then she sees the red crystal on his forehead and hits it with all her might. Later, in the pouring rain, she looks at her reflection and asks herself who she is now. Someone runs up and asks if she's okay, but the girl grabs him by the clothes. She demands to know the name of the crown prince. The blue-haired boy becomes frightened and asks her to calm down. He still says that the prince's name is Gerard Atalanos and asks to let him go. The girl lets him go and asks if he is that handsome bastard. The guy is indignant and warns that the hunter could be executed for such words. The girl only sighs, realizing that she sees living monsters and a name from the novel. She says that all this can drive you crazy because she didn't want to see him in person. The girl scolds the person who sent her here because she was placed in the body of a character who is not even in the novel. If she were an aristocrat, she would enjoy the fanatical love up close. Now she wonders who she is, because the villagers know almost nothing about her. The guy with blue hair said that she had recently arrived here. The girl realizes that her life has gone wrong and hits the bell hard against the stone. She breaks through it and declares that if God exists, let her prepare her beautiful neck and wait for her. She understands that it is impossible to exterminate monsters alone. Each species has special abilities, and they often attack in packs. Where the aristocrats did not send out troops, hunters appeared to protect their loved ones, and on the western border, she saw how they covered each other. Later, she drags the monster, and someone wonders how she managed to get through the first level alone. The girl asks again about the level, and the man is perplexed as to how she managed it. She replies that she didn't understand it herself, because the monster simply went limp after being hit with an axe. A little later, she regrets having said this, because she always tried not to attract attention. But everything went wrong, and now someone is offering her a fight. She thinks, who would have thought that such a stupid rule would appear because of an old man? The man announces that whoever defeats Ellaraine in a one-on-one fight will be able to hunt alone in the Antoni forest. The girl is infuriated by this, and she mentally apologizes for her harsh words. Since this is the case, she asks if God can bring her back. She promises to be a good girl while the enemy is indignant at being ignored. The girl endures, reminding herself that he is only a person and should not be cut in half. Someone mockingly asks if this coward is really Ellaraine. After all, she looks so weak that she can hardly cope with a lesser monster. The guy provokes her into attacking, and the girl realizes that he is a former bandit who came for easy money. She agrees that he is right, and he is at a loss, not understanding what he is talking about. Rain says that she couldn't even skin Idol, and someone suggests that she's just too lazy. The guy insists that he was told to defeat her in order to enter the forest, but the girl calls this nonsense. She says that no permission is needed, and he can go wherever he wants. The boy is surprised, and the girl explains that the forest has no owner. Rain asks who told him to beat her, and it becomes clear he was just being played. The boy gets angry at the old man. He thanks Rain for telling the truth, and the girl replies that she is glad to help. The guy leaves, saying at the end that he will go, and the young lady says goodbye to him as if forever. As soon as he disappears, the smile disappears from her face and she quietly calls him a fool. After all, he was seriously planning to go into the forest alone. At that moment, a blue-haired boy approached Rain. He cries out that if he goes alone, he may well fall into eternal sleep. The young lady replies that such fools usually cannot be convinced, so it is better to say goodbye beautifully. Besides, she doesn't like his face at all, and the guy immediately notices that this is the real reason. He grabs his forehead and screams, asking how many times has this happened. The boy rushes after the fool, shouting for him to stop, and the young lady only sighs tiredly. After some time, she returns home and realizes that the day was surprisingly easy, and that idiot was most likely saved by Wayne, so there's nothing to worry about. But near the house, she notices the headman of the village on the western border. The girl is slightly surprised and says that she didn't particularly want to meet him. After all, the mercenaries he sends keep coming to her. The man asks if she's talking about them, and does he mean those young guys who wanted to go into the forest alone? The girl asks when he will finally cancel this annoying rule. And isn't he waiting for her to actually put someone into eternal sleep? But the man assures her that she won't do that. The young lady confesses how much this old man infuriates her, and he replies that the feeling is mutual, and she understands that only her conscience is holding her back. The man suggests postponing the dispute and says that he came with a request. The girl is surprised by his seriousness and asks him to behave as usual, assuming that the Baron is having problems with monsters again. She says she agrees. The details are not important, but in payment he is obliged to cancel the rule. However, the man replies that this time it is different and addresses her by her full name. He tells her to stop hunting monsters. Meanwhile, the Duke apologizes to His Highness for his previous absence. The Emperor replies that he understands, as a close friend has died, and offers his condolences. Brunei thanks him. The Crown Prince suggests getting down to business and reminds them of an important issue from the previous meeting. The discussion was about creating books about monsters, since the current reference book has serious flaws. It contains descriptions of species and characteristics, but there are no methods for destroying them, and it is impossible to delay any further. The capital is protected by the blessing of Vasallanos, but outside its borders, people suffer every day. The Duke served as an example to all and was respected, and his knightly troop had an impeccable reputation. There is no doubt in the Empire that he is the right man for this task, and this is an order. He is ordered to create a collection of methods for destroying all the monsters on the western border. He agrees, and soon the main character is talking to her grandfather. She asks if an aristocrat from the capital will really arrive with a squad of knights. The man confirms and adds that Baron Bakram simply cannot sit still. The girl asks about the purpose of the visit, and the village elder explains that they want to join forces with the Nifel border guards and study monsters. The young lady is surprised and says that no one will go there, because the place has been abandoned for a long time. The man agrees, noting that only an idiot would go there for a paltry fee. The girl adds that most of the monsters are in the first-level canyon, and one wrong move costs a life. The headman says that this is exactly how it is, and these people are actually going into eternal sleep. According to Baron Bakram, the information is accurate, and the aristocrat wants to take a guide from the village. Any fool will become just a shield for them, and the village will lose a valuable hunter. The girl asks why he is so worried, because no one will agree. The man replies that money will solve everything if the amount is large. The heroine reacts immediately, and the headman laughs, saying that she fell for it right away. The blonde asks if this means she can't talk about her hunt. After all, she can be chosen as a guide, and the man confirms this. He says that few people can not only know, but also find monsters, and he wants her to stay. The girl replies that money can be too tempting. She is confident that she will survive as a guide or as anything else, so why should she refuse? The man then promises to raise the rate by 50% and cancel the rule, and she agrees. The headman laughs, saying that it is easy to negotiate with her, but the girl warns that deception will cost him dearly. He gets up and says that everything is decided, it's time to go. The man wishes her good night and leaves, and the girl returns to the table. She thinks that it is not for nothing that they talk about the importance of treating people well. As soon as the threat appeared, the old man immediately raised its price. The girl reflects on the aristocrat from the capital and his true goals. She felt like she had read about it in a book, where it all turned out to be the Crown Prince's plan. She wonders who it was, but decides that it makes no difference, since she won't see her favorite anyway. The lady sighs and dreams that some handsome man will fall from the sky on her. At this time, the servant informs his lordship that they will arrive soon. He asks if it's true that he'll only take one hunter, and the brunette confirms it. The servant thinks it would be better to take several, even if the rules only allow one. He points to the entrance to the village, and the man removes his hood. He says he hopes to find the right person. Soon, people are whispering whether these are the aristocrats. The girl turns to the headman, and he winks, reminding her of the deal. Wayne asks what's wrong with Uncle Gleason, and she replies that it's senile dementia. The blue-haired guy says he approached her, but she chalks it up to strange symptoms. She asks if he heard about the people who came to study the monsters. Wayne replies that he heard about a high-ranking person creating a collection. The girl clarifies, and he says that this is an order from the Crown Prince on how to exterminate monsters. Rain knows he doesn't know him, but it's clear he was sent west, almost to certain death. She remembers an aristocrat who was sent to the border, and there fell into eternal sleep. He was definitely in the book, but she can't remember, and she decides to forget. What's the point of remembering if he's still no more handsome than her Gerard? At that very moment, the heroine freezes, seeing a real handsome man in front of her. Wayne asks if she saw it, because he has never met such a beautiful person. He notices her shock, but she insists that it is impossible. Looking at the guy, the young lady understands that she needs to act, and he feels her gaze on him. The captain of the Winter Knights introduces himself and says that they are looking for a guide. The squad decided to hold a hunting tournament to select a suitable person. The hunter who passes the selection will receive 500 gold. Everyone is amazed by the amount, but the girl thinks that it is too small for the risk of her life. She wonders why she needs to test skills when she could just use people as a shield. They announce that those who wish to come forward and state their name. People rush forward, and Wayne asks if she will come. He is sure that she will be chosen, but the girl thinks that she would not participate for the sake of money. However, this is the first such handsome guy in 3 years, and I don't want to miss the chance. She also understands that a trip to the border could be a one-way trip. Wayne says she's the strongest, but she replies that she's not worried about herself. The guy guesses that she is worried about him, and the girl is lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, she hears a conversation about a certain aristocrat Winter. She grabs the guy and demands that he repeat it, mentioning Winter's name. He asks her to let go of his hand, but she screams at him to speak faster. The guy calls her name Clive Winterlock, and Wayne is confused about what is happening to her. Another guy whispers that she seems to have gone crazy, and the heroine remembers Athelia Winterlock. She realizes that this family belongs to the novel's main character, who is obsessed with the Crown Prince. So this man is Athelia's beloved brother, whom Gerard got rid of. His name was Clive Winterlock, and his sister loved him madly. The Crown Prince considered him a hindrance between himself and Athelia. Therefore, under the pretext of creating a collection, he sends him to the border, where, at the beginning of the story, he falls into eternal sleep in a battle with a monster. The main character is shocked to realize that in front of her is the first handsome man she has seen in 3 long years, and she can't help but wonder if he can really just fall into eternal sleep. After this, the girl confidently declares that she will also apply, because she does not intend to allow such an outcome. The village elder cries out, begging for anything but this, and after a while the conditions of the hunting tournament are announced. After a free solo hunt in the forest closer to sunset, everyone must bring back attributes from different monsters, and the winner will be the one with the most. However, hunting is only permitted alone, and attributes obtained with someone else's help will not be counted. As the hunters disperse, the Duke remembers the young lady's look and wonders who she is. All the participants are clearly avoiding her, and he doesn't understand how she's even going to go hunting with an old axe. However, he decides that the results will put everything in its place. Soon, one hunter asks another, in surprise, if he really brought back 3 items. At this moment, Wayne comes up, throws the bag on the floor, and wearily says how tired he is. The boy states his name, and the headman's son remarks that this hunter has amazing abilities. After all, the horns belong to a 3rd-level monster, and due to the inconvenient location of the magic stone, such creatures are most often simply beheaded. One of the judges asks his colleague to write this down, and reports to the gentleman that the hunter brought 5 different types of attributes, the most of all at the moment. Someone notices that the choice seems clear, but at that very moment the main character asks to clear the way. The girl places a bag with various attributes on the floor, and a noise of surprise immediately arises around. Wayne asks if she was really that serious, and receives a confident, "Of course," in response. After all, such a chance rarely comes along. The young lady turns her gaze to the Duke, trying to decipher his expression. She realizes that he feels uneasy around her, as if he feels like prey to a wild animal. The guy doesn't understand what she's thinking, although in reality the girl is just admiring how handsome he is. At this time, someone informs his lordship that the hunter's name is Ella Rain. She is rumored to have incredible skills and to know the habits of the monsters in these parts better than anyone else. One of the judges notes that the cat shows that it is no slouch, although its character is still alarming. The man asks how many types of attributes she brought, and here's the answer: 5. The judge notes that Mariah Wayne had the same number, which means the victory should go to the one who arrived first. The main character, shocked, asks her colleague if he really has 5 types, and he replies that he tried seriously for the 500 gold coins. The girl thinks what a slow-witted fool he is, because they won't choose her as a guide anyway. Suddenly a scream is heard, and everyone realizes that a monster of enormous size has appeared. The judge orders the area to be cleared, notices the frozen girl, and demands that she run away immediately. In response, she just smiles and remarks on what a perfect moment it was. After all, if she puts him into eternal sleep, first place will be hers. Gyra is a second-tier monster, and from the lack of a visible stone, she knows it's well hidden. The monster rushes to attack, but the girl deftly dodges, jumps, and continues moving. She thinks that he should first lose his head, but in a jump, the Gyra suddenly spits acid. The main character jumps back and notes how troublesome he is, and that it won't be finished quickly. One of the knights asks if they should help, but the other replies that they will only get in the way. Then someone notices that Rain has never fought a Gyra, and the Duke realizes that she is just an ordinary hunter. He decides that nothing can be done, takes out his sword, and is going to intervene with his squad. But at that very moment, he is stopped and asked to look in that direction. The monster prepares to splash acid in their direction, and the main character turns to the Duke. She understands that if she dodges now, the beautiful flower behind her will suffer. Therefore, the girl immediately throws the axe and declares that she will not allow this. The people behind her are amazed by what they see, and she turns to Wayne to ask him to borrow her sword. The guy asks in surprise what she has in mind, but the girl repeats her request. He calls her heartless and throws her a sword, which she instantly picks up. Rushing towards the monster again, she separates its head from its body with one precise blow. The Duke is amazed by what he sees, and the young lady plunges her sword into the ground and notes that the sun has not yet fully set, so she can be considered the winner. Sometime later, in the tavern, they discuss whether Ella Rain was ultimately chosen. Another man confirms this and adds that the attributes were even level 1, which frightens the girl. Someone recalls that this has happened before and asks where she is now. They tell him that she was called to the inn where the Duke was staying because 500 gold pieces were at stake. The guy says that she will leave soon, and this makes him sad, because despite all her madness, she has saved them more than once, even today. Many owe their lives to her, and without her, it will be empty. Someone asks if everything will be okay, and here's the answer that they are worried not about her at all. After all, the Duke had just met her. At this moment, the main character stands in front of the Duke's door. She understands that she will finally be able to look at him up close, because now he is her favorite. The blonde man sits next to the axe and looks at it, remembering the lady's request to look after the weapon. She warned him to be careful, because sometimes the axe moves on its own. Soon, another servant approaches him. He asks what's wrong with his face, and the blonde just asks if he can replace him at his post. The colleague agrees, but notices how pale he is and asks where the hunter is. The blonde replies that she is inside, and at that moment, the door opens. The girl looks at the man standing in front of her, and at first thinks it is Clive. But upon seeing her face, she's disappointed. The man notices her gaze, and she asks what's wrong. She realizes that she was expecting to see the Duke and was in such a hurry, but in the end, this rude man is sitting in front of her. The interlocutor thinks that he doesn't like the girl's aura and decides to keep her away from the Duke. He suggests getting down to business and explains why he called her. Her task is simple, to lead them to the places where the monsters live. They will fight themselves, and she will have to wait, which greatly surprises the young lady. She asks in shock what it means to wait and why she can't fight with them. The man replies that the order concerns only the Duke and his knights, and there should be no outside casualties. Such is his lordship's will, and he intends to fulfill his duty personally. The girl begins to understand the reason. After all, even if the campaign is part of the Crown Prince's plan, Clive is still a duke, and according to the plot, he is destined to plunge into eternal sleep. She decides that since this is the case, she will protect the Duke at any cost. The man, shocked, asks what she is talking about, and the girl assures him that no monster would dare breathe the same air as them, and let this whole plot go to hell. The man realizes that she really is crazy. At this time, the servant greets His Highness, and the blonde guesses that he has come for a reason. The servant confirms and reports news about the Duke of Winterlock. He was informed that the Duke had hired a hunter from a village near the forest of Antan. The blonde recalls recent events and admits that he is worried about the Duke, but hears that there was only one incident. His Highness notes the Duke's wit and admits that he almost regretted sending him there. But since he's okay, there's no need to worry. The servant admires the prince's good nature. The crown prince says that if the Duke is in the forest, he will soon reach the border. The servant replies that it will take 3 days, and Gerard only nods. He asks to report about the Duke in future and apologizes for disturbing him. The knight replies that he had no doubt about his intentions. The prince praises him for his work and lets him go, and the knight says goodbye. When he leaves, the prince's face changes, and he remembers the wishes for good health. He smirks and tells me not to make him laugh. He is reminded that this is a common formula of farewell and a sign of fidelity. The prince coldly replies that the old man does not have long to live, and that is the only reason he was able to take his place. All that remains is to get Ophelia, and to do that we need to get rid of the Duke. The interlocutor remarks that the Duke is stupid and could have saved his life by giving up his sister. Gerard sighs and says that he would have executed him one day anyway. Then he orders a report on the affairs on the border, because the Duke's grave will soon appear there. They answer him that even if the Duke is strong, he will not get out of there alive. There are monsters there that react to smell and breath, so there's nothing to worry about. Gerard is glad to hear that. With a smile, he asks when their dear Duke will fall into eternal sleep. He's already dreaming of comforting Ophelia as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the protagonist checks her bag and confirms she's got clothes and money. She nods contentedly and notices the medallion. This thing was left by the body's previous owner, and she is interested in what it is for. The girl puts the medallion in her bag, deciding to sort it out later, and throws it over her shoulder. She says it's time to go, and when she goes outside, she sees a mountain of gifts. The girl asks what these are, and Wayne replies that they are gifts from the villagers. The village chief tearfully announces that their prized hunter is leaving. The main character is surprised and admits that she thought that no one liked it here. The blue-haired boy just smiles and says he knew it. Some time ago, a girl was dragging a guy along with her and calmly telling her that on the way she picked up an idiot whose head was almost bitten off by monsters. Wayne asks if she remembers that incident, because it happened more than once and the girl helped many in difficult situations. All the villagers are sincerely grateful to her. The young lady understands that she had no intention of making connections, as she could have vanished at any moment, leaving no trace. But she missed one detail. The struggle to survive in this world affected not only her, but also the lives of others, changing her as well. The main character just says that she understands, then hugs Wayne and thanks everyone. With tears in her eyes, she says that she hopes to see you soon and will definitely return. But these are just the guy's thoughts, because in reality, the girl says goodbye to them simply and calmly. The blue-haired guy is surprised and asks if that's all there is to it. Where are the hugs and tears? The blonde asks them not to make a fuss and says that they won't even have time to blink before she'll be back, and such goodbyes will only embarrass them. Wayne has doubts and says that he doesn't think she'll be back anytime soon, and he's not the only one who feels this way. The others also have a premonition that they won't see her for a long time. Already in the carriage, the young lady wonders why he even said that. And didn't he understand that she was leaving for the Duke of Winterlock? And was still thinking about the meaning of this trip. She's irritated by the guy who makes it impossible for her to do anything, and she wonders why he's so big anyway. Rain decides that he thinks he's a manager, and that infuriates her. Then she wonders what they're talking about so seriously. Soon everyone starts pitching their tents. The young lady looks around and realizes that the trees provide good cover. But turning to the knights, she sees how they turn away, clearly not feeling joy towards her. This is no longer disdain, but outright hostility. But she doesn't care, because she had no intention of being friends with them. At this moment, a knight of the Winter Company named Ralph approaches her. The girl says she's actually 20, but he introduces himself as Ralph Haugen and adds that he's 40. Eventually, she allows him to call her whatever he wants, mentally remembering that with her past life, She's already 30. Ralph admits that he was shocked by the situation with Gyra and wants to ask a few questions. He is interested in ways to destroy such monsters, other species, as well as those that live only on the western border. He asks about the poor eyesight of monsters, about psyllium and whether it is worth running away from it right away, and also inquires about other creatures. The main character realizes she's finished. After a while, she explains everything, and he diligently writes it down. Then comes another question, and the girl mentally begs him to shut up, wondering how long they will stay here. Now it becomes clear to her why he approached her in the first place. At that moment, someone else addresses the huntress. The main character mentally cries out to God and grumbles that he will still answer for such a late savior. She asks why he came so late, and the man replies that he found the conversation interesting and didn't want to disturb her. Rain is surprised and says that she thought he would never talk to her again, but here's the answer that he just had to. His lordship invites the girl to dine with him, and she is visibly surprised. And then she thinks with delight that she will have dinner with the Duke. A little earlier, the man assured the Duke that this girl was abnormal. Last time, she used strange and incomprehensible words. She's just a guide, so she shouldn't have any business with the Duke. But it's still worth staying on guard. The Duke asks the servant to choose his words carefully and reminds him that even an ordinary hunter is important to the mission. At this time, they report that there is an open clearing nearby, convenient for the pass. The man decides to stop there for the night and orders everyone to prepare for the night. He also looks at the young lady and says that he will invite her to dinner today. The assistant, shocked, asks why, but the Duke replies that her help is irreplaceable and he wants to show respect. The man mentally doubts whether this lady is even familiar with the concept of table etiquette. However, at dinner, the girl demonstrates impeccable manners, and the brunette asks if she has been trained in etiquette. He asks where she learned this, since it is what aristocrats are taught. It is unlikely that an ordinary hunter would have such an opportunity, and the girl understands this. She first talks about novels, but then claims that Baron Bakram taught her during a dinner together. The girl remembers that it was the first time she ate heartily, just like today. After all, when your eyes are happy, everything seems especially delicious. The Duke's assistant is sure that the girl is thinking about something indecent. She mentions that the captain forbade her to participate in the hunt, and the guy confirms that they only needed a guide. He only asks to share knowledge with the notebook, and the girl understands that he is talking about that very fanatic. She agrees, even though it is tiring, and asks if she can still take part in the hunt. Clive had previously been advised not to sign temporary contracts with hunters to keep them on their toes. But Ellaraine showed unexpected enthusiasm and seemed like an excellent choice. The man says he understands her, but the question is difficult, since she is not formally connected with the mission. The girl replies that her goal is obvious, to prevent him from falling into eternal sleep and to protect him from any threat. The man and the Duke are surprised, and he asks if she is talking about him. The girl assures that she will protect him even at the cost of her own life. The Duke asks why, and his assistant slams the table and tells her not to make him laugh. He shouts that she is repeating the same thing and has no right to speak like that, having barely met the Duke. The man declares that he will protect him as the captain of the Winter Squad and demands that the girl know her place. The young lady responds by shouting that he is talking nonsense and asks if he fought the monster one-on-one. She doubts his skills, reminding him of the flying monsters, but he replies that he will figure it out himself, and she asks who will teach him this. The man is indignant, and the Duke sighs heavily and turns to them both. He says that he is able to protect himself and does not need their help. The main character thinks that the Duke is sweet, even in anger, and the commander notes his courage. The brunette announces that dinner is over and everyone can go free. The man rejoices, and the Duke adds that River can go too. As they leave, the two continue to exchange barbs. Alone, the Duke sighs. It felt like a typhoon had passed through the room, and nothing like that had happened since that day. Memories take him back to the past, when his father taught him to uphold traditions. He taught us to hide our weaknesses and feelings to protect our family. The young man then agreed, and remembered these words forever. At the age of 15, he said goodbye to his father and from then on hid his emotions, protecting his loved ones. 12 years have passed, and Clive Winterlock has become the Winter Duke, accustomed to hiding his feelings. Until Ellaraine appeared in his life, capable of turning everything upside down. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince is informed that the monsters are becoming more and more aggressive. Messages are coming in daily, especially from the western border. The blonde orders all the documents to be brought, deciding to examine them personally. He then apologizes to the young lady for delivering the report in her presence. He reassures Athelia, saying that the imperial family will support the Duke. The girl asks to be addressed as the Duke of Winterlock's deputy. The guy comes up and says that the Duke will be back soon. She gets embarrassed and steps aside. The girl apologizes and says that she feels unwell and wants to leave. The man offers to send a doctor, but she assures him that rest will help. The blonde smiles and orders the carriage to be prepared. The young lady leaves, and His Highness watches her go with a grin. Athelia Winterlock was wise but fragile, and bad news easily hurt her. At the Duke's estate, she looks at the teddy bear her brother gave her. She then hits the toy and loudly declares that she is the Duke's second in command. She is indignant. Why should she repeat this again and again? The butler brings tea, and the girl drinks it immediately. She decides to go to the office and prevent the fall of the family. Having finished her business, she intends to write a letter to her brother, and if he dares to fall into eternal sleep, she will dig him up, plunge him into eternal sleep again, and bury him once again. Athelia, who was considered weak, was in fact strong, which is why little Clive had to be stitched up more than once. The Duke puts his hand on his chest and says he has a bad feeling. The main character rides in a carriage with knights and explains that the monster's magic stone is hard to see, so it's better to cut off its head. Suddenly, she notices one of the knights looking at her with pity. He immediately turns away, but the girl understands that something is wrong here. These people treat her like she's nothing. Maybe it's because of her background, but even that's too far gone. After this, the main character turns to Haugen and says she has a question for him. The man, smiling, suggests asking without hesitation. The girl immediately adds that, unlike some, she does not intend to drive a person into eternal sleep with questions alone. Then she asks if it's true that the hunter betrayed one of them. One of the knights chokes on his water, and the man with the notebook insists he's heard nothing of the sort. The girl continues, asking if there's ever been a case where a hunter mistook a knight for a monster and started hunting him. The man replies that it sounds terrifying. Then the young lady exclaims sharply, "Why then are hunters so disliked?" Haugen, surprised, asks what she's talking about. The girl replies that she doesn't care what anyone else thinks, but the atmosphere in the squad seems strange to her. Their behavior isn't just ignorance, but outright wariness. Haugen says it's likely a misunderstanding. He begins to explain that it is not a matter of hostility at all, but at that moment a cry is heard about the appearance of a monster. The main character is surprised, and the knights immediately clarify that it is a flying monster. The order is given to prepare bows and arrows. Shots ring out one after another, but they all miss. The man with the notepad notices that it is just a level 1 flying monster. The young lady confirms this and calls him a quarry. At this point, the knight's commander turns to the huntress. He demands to know how to destroy the monster. The girl explains that first they need to bring it down to the ground, then break the magic stone. There are stones on either side of the wings, but hitting them with arrows is almost impossible. So the best option is to climb onto the monster and rip off its wings. The man decides they'll try to lure it lower. He loudly orders the use of arrows to force the monster down. He then turns to Rain, but turns around to notice that the cart is gone. At that moment, the girl shouts for everyone to hold their positions. Haugen notes that the situation seems strange and asks if she's sure. The young lady replies that this is exactly the case, since the quarry never come down from their mountains. She asks Haugen to take her to the squad immediately because she needs to mount the monster as soon as it gets closer. The man agrees. He tells her to hold on tight, and the girl realizes that the monster is indeed starting to descend. She swears because she hasn't had time to get there yet. But at that moment, the quarry lands. The young lady instantly jumps out of the carriage and reaches out to the monster. She grabs him by the paw, climbs up, and decides to first take away one of his wings, immediately putting the plan into action. When the monster starts to fall, the girl thinks that everything is going perfectly, and she needs to jump before it hits the ground. She looks forward and freezes in shock. Meanwhile, the knights ask if the person the monster landed next to is okay. The guy replies that he is fine, because the huntress arrived on time. The man says that he needs to join her immediately, but at that very moment someone shouts to the captain. Breathing heavily, he reports that another quarry has appeared. The Duke decided to distract him from the squad, and now the main character sees him fighting another monster. She shouts at him and remembers that the novel didn't describe exactly where or how the Duke fell into eternal sleep. It only said that it happened shortly after receiving the order. The girl realizes that this happened in the Nightfall Canyons. She briefly wonders if there's another monster there, but then realizes something else is more important. Why is the Duke fighting alone? The young lady screams his name and jumps off her monster, moving on to another. The man asks in surprise if it's a hunter. The girl, already on top of the monster, answers sharply. She says in shock that she was one step away from falling into eternal sleep, then turns to the Duke and notices that he is not there. The girl, confused, says that she doesn't understand where he is, and immediately looks at the other wing. That's where the Duke ends up. She addresses him informally, asking him to hold on tight and not move. The girl asks what would happen if something happened to him. The people below shout that it's dangerous and don't understand why he went there. The brunette answers the huntress that he has been training with the knights for a long time and, as he already said, does not need her protection. The young lady curses in irritation and remembers that, according to the original plot, he is destined to fall into eternal sleep. Then the guy admits that she is more experienced and says that he will follow her instructions, but he emphasizes that he is not going to hide behind her and shift everything onto her, because she is here because of a mission, and he cannot allow her to fall into eternal sleep. The girl extends her hand to him and says with a smile how noble he is, and also handsome, which makes her feel awkward. She suggests acting together, considering it an excellent idea. First, they need to grab onto the wings and tear them off so that the monster falls to the ground. The girl warns that she will not repeat it, so Winterlock must listen carefully. At her signal, they simultaneously strip the monster of its wings. It can plummet, so you need to tie your hands and brace yourself for the fall. Before hitting the ground, you need to do a somersault, and preferably not look down. The man sighs and remarks that she didn't need to explain it in such detail. But seeing her serious look, he nods and says that he understands everything. The young lady says okay and asks you to pay attention, then starts counting. In an instant, they tear off both wings. The monster plunges downwards, and soon they land. When the magic stones are broken, the Duke finally exhales, but worried knights immediately run up to him. The captain apologizes to his lordship for leaving him alone. The brunette replies that the captain did everything possible, and it was thanks to him that the squad remained intact. The knights are almost in tears, and the Duke says that he wants to ask something. The captain immediately replies that he is listening, and then the Duke asks if he looks that weak. The captain is surprised and doesn't understand what's going on. The Duke simply says it's not important and suggests they forget it. After some time, the man finds himself in his room and wearily admits that he is exhausted. He sits down on the bed and notices a book on the table, remembering the Emperor's words about the need to write an encyclopedia of monsters. It should include all species, even those for which no methods of destruction are known. He remembers his sister asking if the Emperor seriously expected him to find a way to destroy all the monsters, as it would almost be like sending him into an eternal sleep. Now the man understands that Ophelia was right. The task is practically impossible. But then he remembers the young lady and wonders if things are really so hopeless. The brunette comes out into the hallway and loudly asks where River is. The captain immediately approaches and asks what happened. The Duke replies that they need to rewrite the contract. Later, the main character reads the new contract and clarifies whether this means that he wants to entrust her with more than just the duties of a guide, but also the training of knights. The man confirms that yes, if she trains them, the squad will be able to cope better and with fewer losses, even if it is not to her advantage to reveal her exceptional skills. So he offers to double the payment. The girl is silent for a moment, and then says there's no need. After today's incident, she herself realized she'd have to train the knights, and she'd already received payment for it. The Duke wondered what she was talking about. The young lady thinks the hairstyle with the fringe down really suits her. Clive, meanwhile, says that if she agrees, she can. Then let him sign the contract here, because training will begin immediately upon arrival at the border. The girl signs, but the commander turns to his lordship and informs him that training will have to be postponed. He regrets to say it, but the knights have not yet accepted her as part of the squad. He adds that he already ordered this behavior to cease, but after this situation, the young lady doesn't understand what situation he's talking about. She sharply asks if he really gave them such an order, since she thought he called her crazy and told her to stay away. The man immediately objects, saying he's not that shameless. The commander claims that as long as he is captain, he will not allow anyone to be treated disrespectfully, even if it is a huntress. This time he'll give them time to figure it all out themselves. The young lady falls silent for a moment. She then says it's commendable and that he acted like a true captain. The man is indignant that he is the captain and doesn't understand why he's arguing with her again. The girl replies that there are no problems, no matter how they treat her. It won't affect her training in any way, and she even feels like she'll miss the old days. After some time, the young lady is bombarded with questions again, and the captain watches from the sidelines. He understands what she was talking about earlier, comes closer, and notices that it is now clear where the noise is coming from. It turns out it was the huntress who was causing the fuss. The girl asks what he's talking about and claims she's been keeping quiet. She says her ears are already tired and it feels like she's listening to 10 Waynes at once. The girl begins to mentally count the monsters, and the captain simply turns around. He wishes her luck, which makes her angry, and asks why he is so happy. The man orders the knights to stop idling and return to their posts. Hogan remarks that the captain seems pleased that she started getting along with the squad. The young lady replies that this cannot be, and asks if he saw his face a minute ago. She wonders what kind of plague this is. Hogan again says he already explained. The knights do not feel any ill will towards the hunters, and the girl asks why the attitude was so strange back then. The man explains that the group had a guide before her, a renowned monster researcher, but he fell into an eternal sleep along the way. The girl asks if this is true. Hogan confirms and adds that he was plunged into eternal sleep for attempting to take the Duke's life. Then the main character understands why the knights looked at her so warily. After all, the Duke could have fallen into eternal sleep twice before he even reached the border. The girl says that's how things are, and Hogan asks what has her so worried. She replies that protecting Clive Winterlock will not be easy at all. Now, knowing all this, she understands the knights because their troop is sincerely devoted to their Duke. The man agrees and says that their Duke often takes on too much and tries to cope alone. And with this task, exactly the same thing happens, so every time they think about the same thing. Why can't the Duke just turn a blind eye to everything? Why does he always refuse the easy way and choose the path of solitude again? Standing behind his reliable back, the knights came to one conclusion. There must be someone next to the Duke who would share this heavy burden with him. Before leaving on the mission, the Duke repeatedly suggested that they refuse, but, of course, no one did so. They decided to take only one guide. Hogan asks if she understands why everything is arranged this way. After all, this rule is in place to protect people. However, many aristocrats ignore him. Even yesterday, the Duke, without a second thought, lured the monster to himself to protect the knights. This incident taught them a lot. They realized that to avoid dragging the Duke down and being a burden to him, they needed to become stronger. The young lady recalls the man's words that if she trains the knights, the squad will be able to cope better and without losses. That's why the girl remains silent at first, and then tells Hogan not to worry. She will be by the Duke's side constantly. The man is surprised, and the young lady replies that they have a new contract. And as a connoisseur of beauty, she will never allow Winterlock to fall into eternal sleep. Hogan asks what connoisseur means. The girl replies that it's like an illness, and he immediately asks if it can be cured. She calmly says that to do this, she would have to gouge out her eyes, which leaves Hogan in complete shock. He wonders about a strange illness. But at that moment, the knights report that they will soon arrive at the border. One of them advises the huntress to eat well upon arrival. Another asks if she has brought spare things and offers to help if needed. The girl replies that she is Rain, and the knights are slightly surprised. She asks to call her by her name and not to forget that she has one. The guys agree and say that from now on they will only address her like that. One of the knights adds that she is right, because they still have a long time to fight together. Hogan asks if he can continue calling her child. The girl notes that he just did so. At that moment, a bell rings in the distance. They have arrived at the border. After a little while, everyone finds themselves in one of the rooms and examines the other knights. Someone turns to his lordship, and the Duke, clutching his head, says that he now understands the Crown Prince's plan. Clive knew that exploration on the western frontier was deadly, and that he had been sent there deliberately. But he still tried his best, realizing that this knowledge would benefit the country. Someone had to do it, and that person was him. Clive repeated these words to himself. However, as he read the report, he thought how strange it all looked. The documents were hastily written and contained almost no information about the monsters. And only now did he realize that it wasn't the border guards' fault. They simply had no choice, and the imperial family had no intention of helping the mission. The Duke ponders what to do next, and the young lady suddenly declares that Gerard Aselanos has completely gone crazy. The people around him turn pale, and the girl adds that she knew about his mental problems, but she couldn't even imagine why the knights were shocked to such an extent. They think they must have just heard it wrong. Surely some huntress couldn't speak so disrespectfully of the crown prince? Hogan calls out to her, but the girl genuinely doesn't understand what's wrong. She says that this deranged crown prince has abandoned the border to its fate, and now it's clear where all this chaos is coming from. The knights realize they heard right. A man with a notepad remarks that she's insulting a member of the royal family. The girl replies that it doesn't matter, since he's not here anyway. She asks if they themselves never do this, but receives only silence in response. The commander of the knights asks what the whole thing is about, but at that moment, the Duke approaches the girl. He calmly tells her to watch her words. The young lady is surprised. She exclaims that she is telling the truth and asks if anyone disagrees with her. The Duke turns and asks who's in charge. One of the knights answers. He introduces himself as the captain of the border detachment and gives his name as Edmund Jensen. The Duke also introduces himself and checks if all members of the squad are here. The captain replies that no, some of the people are currently eliminating monsters. There are 10 of them in total. The Duke understands that the total number of border guards does not exceed 30. He wonders how anyone can hunt monsters with such powers. The captain apologizes for being so blunt and says that this is impossible. They are only checking the wall and repairing it if it is damaged. He adds that, fortunately, many have experience, so they hang in there. But since the monsters here are mostly high level, they get injured constantly. At this point, the main character tickles him, and he becomes confused, adding that this is why they often have to retreat. The commander turns sharply to the young lady and asks who she is. The girl replies that this all looks pathetic. He is indignant, thinking that they are talking about him, but the girl explains that she is talking about the condition of the armor and weapons. She asks if they bought this with their own money. The captain replies that it was supplies. Rain asks why they haven't updated their equipment. He says there's no money for it. The girl remarks that they could sell the monsters, attributes, but the captain replies that everything goes to the Imperial Palace. Rain says that a couple of attributes wouldn't make a difference, and the knight is forced to agree. She adds that there is no place to sell them here, and the merchants are unlikely to risk their lives for such a route. The captain asks again who she is. The girl points to herself and introduces herself as Ella Rain. She's a monster hunter and guide. For 3 years, she's been worried about the doom looming over the country, realizing she's only ever watched from the sidelines. Rain says that in parallel with the encyclopedia, we need to work on the state of the border and find money. Repair everything, upgrade your gear, and improve this place. And finish the encyclopedia as quickly as possible. She asks if everyone understands this. In short, they have one goal, to deal with this crazy prince. But she doesn't have time to finish, because someone covers her mouth and says that first she needs to unload her things. It turns out to be the Duke. He orders the captain to show the knights the rooms. Someone else approaches his lordship, but he says that everyone is free. The knights are surprised. In the hallway, the Duke asks if Rain can help Knight Miller if needed. The girl agrees and moves on. The Duke recalls the commander's words about her being abnormal. He sighs and admits he was right. After a while, the main character helps him unpack. She asks why everyone is reacting this way and whether she's wrong. Her colleague asks if she's serious. He says she is lucky to be on the border, far from the capital. Otherwise, she and her descendants would have been sent to prison for 3 generations for insulting the imperial family. At this point, someone asks if they are talking about insulting the imperial family, and the guy is shocked. Another knight immediately runs up and asks what happened. He notices a guy in a cart and wonders if it is the master magician. The main character also asks if he is a magician, and another knight asks why he was traveling with things. The guy explains that his carriage left, the knights appeared unexpectedly, and he found himself trapped, so he had to sit there. Rain asks again who he is. She is told that it is a mage named Lance Fort, sponsored by the Duchy of Winterlock. He's part of the expedition and is responsible for healing the squad. The boy wearily says he's tired of magical cures. He has already made the 1,802nd bottle, strokes the magician on the head and praises him. The main character turns to him and says that she has a request. She asks if he can do something for her. The magician agrees with a smile. The girl notices that she hasn't yet said what exactly she needs. The guy replies that if this is not another drug, then he agrees to everything. Rain demonstrates exactly what is required. A short time later, she stands before the knights. The magician hides behind her back, and the girl greets the squad. She announces that training begins today, where she will teach them how to fight monsters. She introduces herself as Ella Rain, a huntress and instructor under contract to the Duke, and warns that pity will not help. She adds that this guy will be helping her. One of the knights asks if he's a mage. Another says he's seeing him for the first time. The girl asks him not to come any closer. She says that today they will learn methods of fighting monsters, and asks if they have seen a whore or an armadillo. These are creatures that attack while coiled into a hard shell. She turns to the mage. He uses his staff, and a moving ball appears behind them. Rain tells the knights that they now need to destroy him. The ball begins to roll at great speed, and the knights run away with shouts. The magician reassures them, saying that the orb will disappear upon impact with a person. They immediately ask him why he couldn't have said so right away. He replies that sometimes the ball does not disappear and can roll for a very long time. The main character adds that, in the worst case, she will destroy him herself if he gets to them. She explains that these monsters have a magical stone on their foreheads, between their pointed ears, and to put them into eternal sleep, you need to climb up and hit it precisely. One of the knights notices that the ball is constantly spinning and asks how, in this case, the magic stone can be destroyed. The young lady calmly replies that all that is needed is a precise and strong blow, and clearly demonstrates that there is nothing complicated about it. The knight still doesn't fully understand. Then the girl explains that the specimen chasing them has a barely noticeable mark instead of a stone. She hopes that they will figure out where to strike, but the knight cries out in despair that this mark cannot be seen, even through a magnifying glass. The girl replies that horror will not spare them just because they have poor eyesight, and these words completely shock the guy. The young lady adds that today's training will be unlimited and will only end when they have completed it. The knights realize there will be no mercy. After a while, one of them is barely breathing, and the other, with the last of his strength, runs away from the rolling ball. The captain, sitting next to the Duke, wonders with bewilderment what is going on there. At this point, the Duke turns to him and says that he has read the report sent. He admits that the document was full of ambiguities, and the captain apologizes, explaining that he had never written reports before. The Duke asks if he is reporting the state of affairs to the imperial family. The commander replies that the Duke is the first one who even asked for a report, and the previous captain also did not send anything to anyone, and he did everything he could. He admits that this wasn't enough and apologizes. The Duke asks how long he's been captain. He replies that it's been about 4 years, and the man asks in surprise if the previous captain simply left his post. The guy explains that a monster burst into the base then, and, unfortunately, the former captain instantly fell into eternal sleep. Since he was the deputy, the duties passed to him. There was too much to do, and he did not have time to describe everything in detail in the report. The Duke asks how often monsters sneak across the border, but the captain shakes his head and says that such a thing has never happened before. He has served here for a long time and knows the habits of monsters well, but only recently have they become so aggressive. The Duke remarks that the captain must have had a hard time, but he replies that everything is fine. He adds that the situation has improved at least a little, and they look out the window together. There, a young lady shows how to deal with a monster, and the knights look completely exhausted after a long run. The Duke involuntarily looks at her and wonders what would have happened if Rain had not been there. They might not have even reached the western border, as some people in the imperial castle wanted. But thanks to Rain, they are here. After this, the Duke tells the captain that he will order new equipment for the border guards. He also insists on the building being repaired as soon as possible, since it is unknown when the monsters will decide to attack again, and the captain understands that he must give it his all. He then announces that they will have a budget meeting after lunch. After some time, everyone gathers in the border zone meeting room. The main character asks why she was invited, and the man replies that as a guide, it is important for her to be aware of what is happening. Rain realizes that she doesn't like gatherings and can't help but remember her past life. At this point, someone asks how much money is set aside for purchasing equipment. The captain replies that there is no exact amount, and the small budget from the imperial family is spent on food and the restoration of the walls. The young lady is outraged that they are given almost no money and calls it madness, and the Duke remarks that additional income can be obtained through sponsorship. He explains that any organization can request it, and the duchy will support such a request. The girl agrees and says that they will sort out the sponsorship, but she immediately wonders what to do next. because even if she had money, there was no market or retail outlets here. She adds that traveling 30 lands to get equipment is dangerous, and carts with goods will inevitably become the target of bandits. Security will require hiring people, costing even more money, and even in the best-case scenario, the entire delivery will take at least a month. So they need not only money, but also a place where they can earn and spend it at the same time. The brunette thinks for a moment and asks if she has any ideas. The girl confidently replies that there is, and enthusiastically suggests opening a black market. However, no one shares her ardor, and the Duke, shocked, asks what she even means. The Knight Commander also asks if she is serious, and the girl is surprised by such a reaction. She insists that this is the most effective way, but the man asks how she even came up with such an idea. The blonde explains that the black market can be used to sell attributes and obtain everything necessary, and in response, she hears a reminder that this is illegal. The young lady calmly notes that she knows this very well, since she has been hunting monsters for many years. She adds that now they don't have the luxury of choosing between legal and illegal. For example, the claws of Quorai, whom they put into eternal sleep last time, can be sold for 500 gold. The more money, the better the equipment, and even though the market is illegal, it allows you to effectively fight monsters. The young lady watches the Duke, hoping to convince him, and he admits that her arguments are reasonable. He says that in their situation, it is worth trying, because human lives are at stake. However, the man understands that rumors about the Duke's illegal activities could reach the capital. In this case, his people and family will be at risk. He acknowledges the risk and suggests thinking about it some more, but the young lady immediately declares that the market can be opened in her name. The man is surprised, and the girl explains that an aristocrat cannot openly engage in such a thing. The captain asks if she understands that all responsibility in case of failure will fall on her. The young lady replies that she has already done a lot of illegal things and it is too late to be afraid, and the man, shocked, asks if she is bragging. The Duke says that this would put Rain in great danger and he would like to avoid it. The girl is surprised and claims that this is precisely why the market is needed. She says they have a choice between surviving without proper equipment and surviving on a budget, and he asks which option seems more reasonable to him. The brunette asks why she insists so desperately, but then cuts off the conversation. He agrees and says that they will follow her plan, and if something goes wrong, he will help her get out. It doesn't matter whether it's legal or not, and the girl replies with a smile that they have an agreement. She adds that she will send a letter tomorrow morning, and in a couple of days they will be able to open the market and make a deal with the goods and her favorite axe. One of the knights asks why he would take an axe to a deal, and the girl says that it is a good question. She explains that there will always be those on the black market willing to put her into eternal sleep. It's a side effect that keeps prices stable, and the Duke says he'll go along with it. Rain remarks that he will stand out too much, but the guy promises to wear a hood, and after thinking about it, she agrees. After a while, the commander of the knights walks down the corridor and sighs heavily. He realizes that this girl is full of surprises and remembers her words about the black market. Although it is illegal, it is the best option available, especially since the market will be open in her name. He didn't expect Rain to voluntarily get involved in such a dangerous matter, but he had noticed it earlier, that she is a good person, and after that she heads to the Duke's room. There is no answer, and the man walks inside in surprise. At that very moment he freezes, seeing the Duke and the young lady too close to each other. From the outside it looks like they are kissing, and he involuntarily cries out. Earlier, the knights were fighting the monster, and someone was shouting that there was no choice and they needed to get ready to cut off its head. Another replied that the neck could not be cut, and the magic stone was hidden from view. So all that was left was to behead the monster, and the young lady then turned to Haugen. She asked if she should go down with the axe, but he replied that she had no place on the hunt. The girl got angry and shouted that this was already the 6th raid, and she still hadn't put a single monster into eternal sleep. The man asked her where she thought the magic stone was, suggesting that it was hidden somewhere in the body. Rain realizes that the stone is in his right front paw and is surprised at his own observation. She considers whether to shout about it, but remembers the previous turmoil when she caught the monster alone. The girl again asks herself why she is forbidden to participate in the hunt, without receiving a clear answer. Eventually, she decides she can't take it anymore and throws down her axe. He hits the stone right on target, the monster screams and falls, and the girl notices that she was actually aiming for a different spot. But luck smiles on her, and the blow hits the magic stone. One of the knights shouts that the hunt is not over yet, but Rain replies that they can manage without her. She realizes she must speak to the Duke directly about this. At this time, the man is sitting in the office and filling out important documents. Suddenly, the girl bursts inside and he flinches in surprise. The Duke asks what brings her here, and she declares that she will take part in the hunt. Clive replies that it is enough that she acts as a guide, since there are enough hunters. The girl abruptly declares that this is complete nonsense and points to the nights outside the window. She screams that a real nightmare is happening there, and the Duke is embarrassed by her proximity. He notices that Rain has the same hair as the Crown Prince, and while her aura is not as majestic, she still exudes warmth. The girl continues to insist, but the Duke turns away and says that he refuses. She asks why, and he replies that it is not about that. He asks her to move away, but at that moment the commander enters the room. After that, they both turn to him, and he freezes in shock. The man cries out, wondering if the girl is completely insane. He demands an explanation, but she immediately shouts that it is a pure misunderstanding. The commander tries to object, reminding him of what he saw a second ago, but the Duke calmly says that there was a misunderstanding and nothing happened. The young lady slams her palm down on the table and declares that she will participate in the hunt no matter what. The Duke firmly refuses, and the girl cries out, "Why not?" To which he replies that they have enough people. They need to gain experience, and if she trains them well, they can handle it themselves, since her role as a guide does not include participation in raids. Rain sarcastically asks, since when did they become so law-abiding, reminding them of the decision to open a black market. The Duke is about to answer something, but the girl becomes embarrassed, turns away, and suddenly says to hell with it. She states that she will not participate in the hunt and adds that it is unfair to use such a look against her. However, she warns that if someone is in danger, she will intervene, regardless of the rules. The girl leaves, and the Duke, left alone, sighs heavily. The captain admits he's been puzzling over her behavior for a long time. He suggests letting her take part in the hunt, as then she will become a shining example for the others. The brunette agrees that these words make sense, but reminds him that the lady is their only guide. He recalls how she first insisted on hunting, and then suggested opening a black market, and the way she spoke to him just recently, which now makes him think about it with embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the village where Rain lived, someone asks Wayne if he had heard the latest news. The guy with blue hair asks what they're talking about and whether it's about the black market, and in response, he hears about animal intuition. He snaps back that he doesn't want to hear about the black market anymore. And the other guy points out that Wayne has always respected the law. The interlocutor suddenly asks if he is curious about what is happening with Ella Rain. The blue-haired boy becomes wary and asks what exactly, and he is told about rumors. It's like a girl opens a black market on the western border, and the guy is genuinely surprised. He asks for details, but his interlocutor sarcastically says that the desire to chat disappeared after he was driven away. Wayne remains silent, and then the guy says that he was joking, because Rain allegedly does not deal with the black market. But he adds that recently there have been rumors about the sale of Corey's claws, and Wayne is thinking about it. He understands that many will flock to such a rare attribute, and this could end badly. Wayne asks if the location of the deal is known and hears that everything will be on the other side of the border. Hearing this, he takes off, throwing out his thanks as he runs, and his interlocutor looks after him in surprise. Wayne runs as fast as he can, knowing he has to make it in time or Rain might get hurt. At this time, the main character is in the room when someone comes in and asks a question. They ask her what she threatened the messenger with, and the girl indignantly replies that this is absurd. She clarifies whether there were any threats involved and states that she did not threaten anyone. But the man suggests not to lie, reminding that the messenger picked up the letter 2 days ago. He adds that it is almost impossible to deliver it in such a short time, pointing to the exhausted appearance of the messenger. The young lady calmly remarks that he is apparently talented, and the captain calls her shameless. The messenger, with the last of his strength, hands over the letter, and the captain advises him not to waste his strength and to rest. The girl takes the letter and praises the guy, saying that he exceeded all expectations. The captain again asks if she really did not threaten him, and she is indignant at who they take her for. The blonde opens the letter and notices that it is clearly not from a commoner. She says it's a letter from Frost Irving, a famous man in certain circles. Rain mentions that she has already met him and informs him that the black market will open tomorrow night. River asks in surprise if it was really just one letter that did it all, and if Irving really helped. The girl answers in the affirmative, adding that it is not difficult for him and he owes her one. The brunette asks if this is related to price stabilization, and she replies that it could be said that way. After this, she orders everyone to be ready, because tomorrow they are setting off on a journey. When the girl leaves, the Duke wonders what to wear to the market, and the commander suggests going himself. The man replies that he will, and the captain can hardly restrain himself from calling her crazy. He asks if the Duke is worried about the danger from Rain's enemies, and he replies that this is not the only reason. They must hedge their bets, because the black market must remain their only violation of the law. The Duke asks if the captain thinks the girl will listen to him. The man remembers their constant arguments and remains silent, and the Duke says that they need to get ready. He believes that the hood is enough to hide his identity, and decides to look into the magicians. The Duke asks where he is now, and the captain replies that he is probably in the research room in the basement. The man says he will be here soon, and the captain looks after him in surprise. He suddenly wonders if his lordship is in a good mood. The next night, the main character stands opposite the Duke, looks at him carefully, and asks what he is dressed up in. The captain is irritated and indignant that the girl addresses the Duke informally. Rain replies that he himself allowed it. The captain does not believe her, but the Duke confirms her words. The man is shocked, and the Duke adds that in such a place there is no need for formalities. He suddenly realizes that he likes it when she speaks to him informally, and Rain thinks about what to do next. She advises to take off the ridiculous hooded cape, otherwise it will stand out even more. The girl asks where he got it, and he replies that Max told him about it. She laughs and says that with such a character, he would have come to the wedding wearing a hood, so it will be better without him, and she immediately picks up the dirt from the floor. Rain smears it on the Duke's face and says that dirt is no bad thing for a hunter. The man is stunned, and a minute later the girl finishes. She declares that he now looks like a real Cinderella, which completely confuses him. Rain laughs and says that since she smeared him with mud, she becomes his godmother. Then he adds that it would be better if he called her Prince, and turns to the knights, saying that they are almost ready. She believes that Edmund also does not need to disguise himself, and when asked about herself, she answers that she has no need to hide. She declares that she will not let hunting stain her clothes because she is above it. After this, the young lady takes the bags and says that it is time to go on an adventure. They head towards the black market, and the Duke looks around in surprise. One of the knights says in amazement that just recently there was emptiness here. He admits that the spectacle is astonishing, and the girl remarks that the scale was unexpected. They see people looking at Rain, and the Duke notes her fame. The young lady replies that they may not even remember her. She says that you need to buy everything you need first and save the money for a down payment. The man offers to sell the paraphernalia right away, but the girl says that only beginners do that. She tells you to follow her, promising to show and explain everything. Soon they enter a stall, and Rain orders 30 vests made from idle skin. The man is surprised by the quantity and asks who she is going to sell them to, but the girl asks the price. The seller says he will give 30 pieces for 30 coins, and she can't believe her ears. He replies that it's practically free, and if he doesn't like it, he can look elsewhere. Rain agrees to leave and calls Cinderella, causing the man to immediately change his tone. She offers 17. Bargaining begins, and the seller calls her a thorn. He agrees to 20 and orders 30 pieces to be measured out. As they leave, the man screams never to see her again. The Duke asks what is the point of such purchases and why she buys everything in sight. The young lady names the number 3 gold coins, and he is surprised. She explains that they will sell the vests for 3 gold pieces, along with the attributes. Otherwise, the traders will smell the money and jack up the prices, and she has already been caught doing this. Rain suggests stocking up on weapons and traps and tells Cinderella to keep up. After some time, she hands over the coins and says that she will pay the rest upon receipt of the goods. She points out the delivery location, a hut on the road to Nifel Gorge. The seller asks if they consider themselves a gang of robbers. He asks why she needs so many weapons, but the girl looks at him coldly. The man immediately falls silent, wishes him good evening, and turns away. And Rain throws out that the curious barbarian's nose was torn off. She returns to her companions and tells them not to strain themselves with such a heavy load. Rain concludes that almost everything has been bought. All that remains is to sell the attribute, and tells Cinderella and Edmund to wait until she makes the deal. Clive asks why the girl calls him Cinderella and what it even means. She replies that she can't call him Winterlock, since that's his secret name. The man smirks and says that the name is too girlish. The young lady notes to herself that he turned out to be smarter than she expected. The guy suggests calling him simply Clive. The girl is slightly embarrassed by this suggestion. She is about to say his name, but first she clarifies whether she can address the Duke by his first name. In the end, she finally calls him that and finds herself with a strange feeling. When he was Winterlock, this hadn't happened, but now it's as if there's a sense of intimacy. She's fine with it and thinks she now understands why favorites are called by their first names and why fans go crazy about it. The young lady says that he can call her by her name too, after which she goes ahead and asks the others to follow her but keep their distance. She adds that they'd better pretend they have no idea who Ella Rain is. They move on, and people around them start whispering whether this is the same Ella Rain. The Duke notices that the girl attracts the attention of everyone around her, finding herself in the center of attention. Now she seems completely different from the Rain he knew before, as if there was a different person in front of him. He decides not to bother his head with unnecessary thoughts and moves on. Suddenly, he hears someone pronouncing the young lady's name with obvious malice. The Duke turns around, and the knight asks what happened. He replies that everything is fine, but in his thoughts he tries to understand who it was, because the girl's name sounded too hostile. He recalls one of the knights asking why she would take an axe to a deal. Then, the girl said that there were people on the black market who were ready to put her into eternal sleep at any moment. The Duke starts running, worried about her. At that moment, the girl opens the bag. She asks everyone to wait in line and states that she will sell the goods to the highest bidder, asking who is willing to buy. One of the men shouts that if it is a real quarry claw, he will take one for 20. A crush begins, and the young lady coldly asks who they take her for and whether they consider her a simpleton. She tells them not to get their hopes up, but suddenly someone offers a bet of 1 gold piece. He declares that he will buy everything for 1 coin and adds that they have finally met. He says he's been waiting for this meeting for a long time. The girl is surprised and asks who he is. She notes that he doesn't look like a local and starts running through names in her mind. Suddenly she realizes that this is the same impudent man who once challenged her. People in the crowd whisper that his clothes and emblem look familiar. Someone asks if he's from the galas. The main character wonders what kind of people they are. She remembers how about 3 years ago, shortly after she was transported to this world, something important happened. Then she burst into a diner and asked if they were the same galas. One of them didn't understand what they were talking about, but the other told his brother that this was the same Ella Rain. The girl asked if they would like to plunge into eternal sleep and suggested that they should rather rob honest people, as befits robbers. She stated that in this rotten society, fair prices only exist on the black market. But who were they to set them? One of them asked what this crazy woman was talking about, and the young lady admitted that she had been stupid. She said that words alone wouldn't do with such scum, and that they would have to be taught a lesson by action. The girl asked if there were any experts in the invisible hand among them, mentioning Adam Smith and his ideas. For Rain, this was more than just a metaphor. Her hand really wasn't visible, and there were no casualties, even if there were no severed bodies. The Gallus family suffered nightmares after this, but now the man says that after some time they were able to be revived. The main character asks him to stop empty talk. She adds that after that skirmish, order was restored at the black market, and the Gallas themselves stopped appearing there, and she kept the agreement. The girl says that it was a long time ago, and asks to forget the past and not to drag her name around in vain. The purple-haired guy orders her to shut up and go get the quarry, promising to turn a blind eye to the past if the goods are real. At this moment, someone jumps on the young lady from behind. The attacker claims that her last hour has come, and everything would have been different if she had listened to him. He is shocked when he sees that the girl is already standing on the defeated enemy. She says that he must have forgotten why she came here, because she sells quarry claws. And he expects to get at least 30 gold pieces for them, and not give them away for a measly coin. The guy runs away in a rage, shouting curses and wishing for her to fall into eternal sleep. The main character engages in battle with him and mockingly says that he is strong only in words. She asks where that menacing guy who promised to put her into eternal sleep went. In response, he only shouts threats again, and several more people attack the girl. At this moment, someone repels their attack and is indignant at how shameful it is to attack in a crowd. He asks if they've really decided to pounce on a defenseless girl in a group. The young lady recognizes Clive, and someone is surprised by his appearance. The attackers point out that his clothes indicate wealth and threaten to make him regret his insolence. Someone shouts at him not to beg for mercy when they deal with him. At this time, Wayne is walking through the market, sees the crowd, and thinks that he is too late to help. As he gets closer, he notices a guy with purple hair trying to hit a lady. She deftly dodges and notices that the blow is not bad, but something is still missing. The guy calls her a bitch, and the girl just smirks. She says it's strange to fight people after so many fights with monsters, which only makes the enemy angrier. Someone asks how long they will be messing around and is surprised by her inhuman strength. Wayne notes that the lady knows how to surprise and calls her incredible. Suddenly, he hears someone scream, turns around and sees a man lying down. There's a brunette standing next to him, and Wayne thinks he looks familiar. He tries to remember who it is, while the main character ends the fight. She tells the unfortunate man to finally fall asleep and looks at the people lying around. With a smile, she says that they had a good time and suggests continuing the trade. After a while, the girl looks at the bag full of gold and says that they will see each other again. Someone asks if she will come again, and she confidently replies that she will, and that she has no intention of stopping there. She says that she will get more monster attributes and return, and someone is pulled up so that he does not ask unnecessary questions. The girl declares that she will hunt in the canyons near Nightfall, which have no owner. She adds that if anyone wants to join, she doesn't care, and it will even be more profitable if they come. The young lady explains that by drinking human red liquid, the monsters will become larger. People are scared, and when she leaves, she notices that one of those standing nearby seemed to be crying. Wayne remembers Angelique sobbing and saying that this madwoman would not fall into eternal sleep even in the canyon. He asks if she saw their crimson faces, and the girl replies that she doesn't care, and he calls her heartless. She says that only idiots cry over something like that, and Wayne remarks that after her words, no one will go there. He adds that there are already not enough people at the border, but the girl replies that she does not need the help of such fools. She says that it will be even better if they don't scream for help, because the weak ones there won't last even a couple of minutes. The young lady asks what he's even doing here, since no one would believe that Mariah Wayne is on the black market. He replies that Ella opened the market herself, and it's impossible to miss something like that when everyone's going crazy with the news. Then he says that perhaps he came in vain and asks who that man was. The girl pretends not to understand, and Wayne says that he is the one who beat up the Gallus gang. She claims that she doesn't know him, but Wayne is sure that she is lying, because he saw their glances. Rain asks him not to talk nonsense and asks how long he plans to follow her, since she needs to return to the border detachment. He asks to speak more quietly, noticing that someone is following them, and the girl is thinking about the Gallus, or someone else. Suddenly, the pursuer calls out Rain's name. He asks where she is going, since the border detachment is in the other direction, and the girl just clicks her tongue. She thinks they should have pretended they didn't notice and is racking her brains over how to get rid of this annoying guy. The blue-haired guy is outraged by the way she called him, and reminds her that he was also worried about her. He then introduces himself to the commander as Rain's colleague and a monster hunter. The border guard commander also introduces himself and says that he is the captain of the detachment. The young man is surprised and asks if Rain herself opened the black market. The girl confirms that it was her and says that the commander simply followed her, after which she rudely advises her friend to disappear into the fog. She sees him off, saying that it's already late and she'll write about everything else later. At that moment, the Duke approaches her, and the boy with blue hair screams, recognizing him. He realizes that they know each other, and the main character just sighs tiredly and turns to Clive. The young man comes closer and asks if that is his name, and then asks if he is from the border detachment, receiving a negative answer. Taking a closer look, he suddenly realizes that it is the Duke himself in front of him, and falls silent. A second later, he cries out in disbelief and calls him Duke Clive Winterlock, and the man confirms that it is true. The blue-haired boy calmly says that Rain called him Clive and confirms that it is true. Wayne repeats to himself that the girl is abnormal. He always knew it, but to address the nobility like that is clearly too much. Meanwhile, the Duke realizes that they sold the monsters, attributes, and bought good equipment, thanks to which the budget has increased significantly. But he is overcome by a bad feeling, and his thoughts naturally return to his sister. At this time, the girl wakes up and suddenly jumps out of bed, and someone immediately turns to the mistress. It turns out to be the nanny. She says the lady seems to have had a nightmare, and the latter admits to having had a dream in which her brother falls into eternal sleep. The woman takes the girl by the hands and gently convinces her not to worry, because it was just a dream. The brunette still asks, what if this dream is not just like that? But the nanny assures that it is an ordinary nightmare. She advises that next time in a dream, slap your brother, then wake up, drink some water, and go back to sleep. But then the woman notices a creepy book about the meaning of dreams on the shelf. She immediately takes the book and says that she will definitely inform the owner. After this, the nanny leaves, and the young lady hears a scream in the corridor about where the mistress got this damned book from. The man responds with surprise and apologizes, realizing that the book was indeed in the lady's possession. The girl with black hair understands that she herself asked her. But at that very moment, something appears behind her. And the next day, Wayne is already sitting in the border guard camp. He introduces himself, and the commander of the Knights and the Duke say that they have seen him somewhere before. The man then adds that the boy was the second hunter to stand out during the inspection, albeit a strange one. He immediately apologizes and corrects himself, saying not abnormal, but peculiar. The guy with blue hair asks if they are talking about Rain. The man is surprised that a sane person has finally come to them and asks why the boy is there. The young man replies that he heard rumors about a black market and was worried about Rain. Wayne says that, as expected, upon arrival he saw Rain enthusiastically harassing Gallus. The man merely remarks that everything is as usual. The interlocutor adds that she was clearly not the only one who created the mess. The Knight commander asks who else could have done this. The blue-haired boy says the man was covered in soot so he couldn't see him. The man assumes it was the Duke, and the boy admits he initially thought it was a joke. The Knight captain cries out, surprised that Rain called him by his first name and not his last. The young man confirms this and asks if it was different before. An awkward silence hangs between them, and after a while the guy finds himself in the Duke's office. The Duke asks if Wayne wants to stay with them, and he says yes. He also asks to accompany them, but the brunette doubts and asks why the guy is getting involved in a dangerous mission himself. The young man says he wants to help the party and the Duke, and at the same time gain experience from respected knights. The Duke points out that this is a lie. The guy gives in and admits that he is simply worried about Rain. He fears that the matter will not be limited to the Gallus alone, and the Duke asks for clarification. The young man asks if he thinks the girl has managed to annoy more than just them. If all these people gather at the next auction, the situation will become much more dangerous, and the Imperial Guard may have to be brought in. The Duke admits that the situation is difficult, and Wayne foolishly asks who is afraid of these simpletons anyway. He immediately falls silent, and the Duke reassures him, saying that as long as he does not openly criticize the Crown Prince, everything is fine. At this time, the main character is arguing with the commander on the street, and the guy with blue hair is wondering how she even lived to this age. He still says that he can help identify enemies and try to resolve everything with words. The brunette notes that the guy is too confident in himself. He replies that he and Rain have been hanging out together for 3 years. The Duke agrees and accepts him. He orders that a room be allocated to him, and the young man happily thanks him. He then offers to help with the hunt, but the Duke asks him not to bother. Only knights and border guards will be engaged in hunting monsters. This also applies to Rain. Wayne is surprised, and soon he's standing next to the girl. He understands that the band sounds strange and doubts that it will be observed. The girl asks if he thinks they have a choice at all. He is surprised that Rain was simply banned from hunting, but the lady says that the reason is their civil status. She adds that one can only intervene if the knights are threatened. At this time, one of the knights asks if they are really allowed to wear this armor. The girl confirms and says that this is basic equipment, and if necessary, she will buy more. The knights thank her, and she jokes, offering to stand in for them on the next hunt. The blonde adds that she will soon completely forget how to hunt, although the knights have already learned it themselves. She goes on, calling it a tragedy. Meanwhile, the Duke broods in his study. He studies the records and realizes that the monster entered through the window, meaning it was flying. Those who are able to fly and see the target through glass are given a specific type. This is Trister, a 5-meter-long monster that attacks with a dive with a sharp beak at great speed. The Duke admits that the description matches, but notes the mucus covering the entire body. Climbing it like Quarry is almost impossible, and it's good that there is so much information about the monsters. It's just a pity that there is no data on those who have not yet been encountered. For example, about a flying creature with caustic mucus. He wonders how difficult it will be to deal with him when someone enters the office. He is informed that Wayne has been assigned a room. The Duke approves and asks why the captain is so pleased. He replies that the guy is reasonable and might be able to calm Rain down a little. He notes that they are friends, and although the girl says that he irritates her, he still does not push her away. The Duke thinks and asks about ingredients from the black market. They tell him that the magician took everything at once and disappeared. The Duke says that's good, and the captain notices the strange change of topic. He asks if everything is all right, but the Duke suddenly freezes. He sees the same monster flying towards them and turns to River. The Duke orders that everyone be warned immediately and that the magician be brought, and he agrees. Looking out the window, the Duke realizes it's Tristar. Meanwhile, beyond the western cordon, the main character also notices the monster and shouts for everyone to disperse. A guy with blue hair runs up to her and asks how to fight this creature. The girl admits that she herself doesn't know, because last time he simply crashed. The guy curses and hands her a sword. She asks if it's from the black market. He replies that it's better than an axe. Meanwhile, orders are being given inside the fortress. Catherine is sent to the command center. Lisa is told to check on the wounded. Someone calls out for Sir Sharon, and it turns out to be the Duke. He points to the commander, who is carrying the mage on his back. The magician is indignant, but the commander tells him to just do something. The young man admits that he does not know how to attack and can only try to influence the birds. He thinks it might help in a collision and decides to give it a try. The magician needs to change the formula a little, and he says it will take 5 minutes. River orders him to be guarded while preparations are made. Soon they shout that the barricade is open, and everyone is called inside, except those carrying out the Duke's orders. The girl starts counting and suddenly notices that 2 are missing. At this moment, an approaching monster is heard, and the captain demands to retreat. But the young lady jumps down and slashes the monsters in the air. She notices one flying past the barricades and curses. They shout at her to go upstairs, and she climbs the stairs. There, the commander points to 2 treesters, and the girl is shocked. She looks for the Duke, but he orders everyone to take cover and stop the attack. With trembling hands, she realizes that it is too dangerous to continue the fight. Clive orders everyone to retreat to the fortress, but the commander turns to Ella. He asks if this is the same monster as before. The girl confirms and says that the shelter does not save, but only makes their task easier. The guy notes that in a cramped space, you can fight back, and the girl understands everything. In the open, knights are targets, but inside buildings, there is no escape. It turns out that the Duke is doomed, and the end of the novel no longer matters. After all, Clive Winterlock is more than a character to her, and she must act. She understands that the flying monster is helpless on the ground, and there is only one way out. After this, the main character confidently says that she is going down and orders the commander to take care of the wounded. She declares that she will deal with the monster herself. The guy asks her to wait, and how the lady plans to do it. In response, she coldly says that she will not accept any objections. A short time later, the commander approaches the Duke. He exclaims in shock, "Where is Rain? She should be with him." The guy replies that the girl went to the barricade and said she had a plan. He adds that here she is, and the Duke is pondering intensely what this plan is. After this, the main character screams loudly for this red waffle to fly straight to her. The monster immediately rushes forward, and the Duke wonders if this is really her plan. As the monster flies toward the young lady, she tries to discern where he has the magic stone. The girl understands that she still hasn't been able to find him, but she has to come up with something, because her baby is in danger. Finally, she notices the magic stone and is amazed at how deep it is hidden. Now it's clear to her why he couldn't be discovered for so long. Meanwhile, the Duke shouts to the young lady that it's too dangerous. When the monster attacks, the girl instantly dodges. The man shouts that now is not the time to yawn and orders her to get down quickly, but the young lady doesn't listen to him, so he approaches her himself. The girl again dodges the monster's blow. Seizing the right moment, she swings her sword and wounds the monster. As the monster continues to fly, the girl thinks she has missed, but soon realizes that at least she has stayed on top of it. So all that's left is to break the stone. At that moment, she wonders what that burning smell is. The Duke shouts at her to come down, as she won't be able to stay there for long. He warns that the monsters are covered in corrosive acid and advises holding onto your head, where there is less of it. The main character looks at her shoes and asks in horror if they are really melting. The young lady understands that it is not easy to come down from such a height, but she forces herself to pull herself together. After this, she takes out an axe and hits the monster with all her might, causing it to fall. The young lady grabs her sword and shouts at the monster that they will still see who will win. The Duke runs up to the captain and says with relief how good it is that he is safe. But the man shouts that he needs a bird. The magician, perplexed, asks what he's talking about and whether the gentleman is planning to fly. The man shakes the boy and orders him to do it faster. He is surprised and asks why the rush. He also asks where Rain is now. Meanwhile, the main character is still trying to put the monster into eternal sleep. The magician immediately begins to cast a spell and creates a bird, shouting that he has slightly changed the formula. He says she can now fly higher than usual. The man demands that they make a bird that can fly even higher, because that's not enough. The magician replies that it is dangerous, but the commander of the knights orders them to carry out the duke's order. The man understands that he wants to get to Rain and realizes how risky it is. If something goes wrong, the monster could grab him. But we must not forget that this informality is now in trouble because of their weakness. In the end, the man agrees and tells her to first bring him to Tristar as close as possible and as quietly as possible. He warns that if he notices them, there will be trouble. The magician nods and agrees, and the man turns to Sharon. He orders him to follow them and cover the Duke from below. The guy agrees, and they continue on their way, and the man secretly hopes that everything will work out. The Duke flies up to the young lady and addresses her. The girl, surprised, asks where he came from. The man tells her to come down as soon as he gives the signal. The main character asks if she should jump. She understands that the idea is not bad and help would not hurt, but now is not the time. The girl shouts that it's too early because the monster's stone needs to be destroyed. The brunette screams in shock at her to drop it as her shoes are almost melted. The girl realizes that this is a serious problem. The souls are already eaten away, and the acid will soon reach her feet. At that moment, the young lady sees the stone again and strikes it with all her might. The stone breaks, and the monster begins to fall. The protagonist loses her balance and also falls. She realizes that this could lead to eternal sleep. And then she sees the Duke, who stretches out his hand to her and shouts for her to grab it. The young lady manages to grab hold, and together they descend to the ground. Soon, knights run up to them and ask if they're all right. At that moment, someone else appears and asks if they have seen Rain and if she is safe. The guy shakes the commander with all his might and shouts where Rain is. The main character responds and says she's fine. She adds that this idiot should stop grabbing people like that, and the young man lets the commander go. He approaches the young lady and says with relief that thank God she is safe, because his heart nearly stopped when he saw her fall. The Duke looks at his hand and remembers how he grabbed the girl with it, afraid that he might not make it in time. Now he says that he is incredibly glad that everything worked out, but at that moment the commander turns to him. The Duke asks how many are wounded. River replies that 16 are injured, but their wounds are treatable, and only 5 knights have serious injuries. Lance used the elixirs in time, so there is no threat to life, but they should still be sent to the capital for examination. Brunei asks if this means all the hunters are alive. They tell him one man was seriously wounded during the first attack. He was unable to move on his own, so he was taken to a shelter, and knights were sent there to check on his condition. The Duke says everyone did a great job, but they should have been better prepared. He also asks where the monster fell and suggests they find it. Wayne tells Rain to stay put and let herself be treated, and orders Lance to stop whining. The main character looks at the monster and asks if its claws are valuable. The blue-haired boy wonders if that's really all she cares about. The girl replies that, of course, because they still have to repair the building and need the money. She grumbles and is indignant that the monster managed to fall right on the fortress. The Duke, watching this, only smiles. And a few days later, the knights begin repairs. The Duke sits in his office and turns to the window. He realizes he survived the attack, but even selling all the monster's parts would likely not cover the repairs. He also writes down the method for defeating the monster in his book. He recalls ordering the lady to descend on the signal, and she insisting on destroying the stone. Now the man thinks that she could not have known everything in advance, but if his guess is correct, then filling out the directory will become easier. All that remains is to figure out how to tell Rain about it. At this moment, someone turns to the Duke, and he allows them to enter. It turns out to be the captain of the knights, who begins his report. But then the main character bursts into the office and shouts at Clive. The man is indignant, calling her a brat, because he told her to wait, but the young lady replies that how long can she wait? He says that they need to wait as long as it takes, and the Duke asks everyone to calm down. He asks what Rain wanted to say, and she just smirks. She declares it's time to fulfill her promise. The man pretends not to understand, and then she yells at him to stop pretending. After all, he said that if the knights were hurt, she would be able to hunt monsters, and there were plenty of wounded now. The walls are damaged, money is low, so it's time for her to go hunting. The Duke turns to the commander and orders him to check whether the mage and Leon are still with Tristar, and if so, to take him to the lab. The man realizes he's effectively being escorted out. He leaves in shock and thinks that the Duke is starting to look more and more like Rain. The girl asks why Clive sent him and if something happened. The man replies that he wants to ask her a question, and the young lady asks him to continue. The Duke asks if she sees the monsters, magic stones. The girl is a little surprised and asks what he means. After Rain woke up in a new body, she almost immediately began fighting monsters. When the guy with blue hair hit one of them, she screamed at him, asking what he was doing. She ordered to hit him on the head, because the stone was there, but the young man was only perplexed. Then she shouted again about the stone and added that he should not talk about its value. The guy replied that that wasn't the issue, and asked how she knew about it. After that, Rain began hiding her sight of the magical stones. It was an instinctive act of self-defense. And with a well-founded mistrust, most likely she wanted to preserve her power and not influence the original. The girl understood that if she told the truth, she would be interrogated, and changing the established realities of the novel The End of the Abyss was dangerous. She didn't want to become a hero or a victim of science, so she chose to hide her abilities. When the Duke asked again about the stones, the young lady realized that it was no longer possible to hide it. She asked him why he even thought she could see them. The man replied that usually, when first encountering a monster, you aim for the head. This is the only way to immediately plunge him into eternal sleep, without accidentally breaking the stone. He examined the monster's body and noticed that they hadn't even tried to cut off its head. All the cuts were in exactly the right place, which is why he decided that she had special abilities. The young lady understands that excuses won't help, and this can't be written off as a coincidence. Luckily, the Duke isn't one to talk. She admits he's right and asks what happens next. The man hands her a book and offers to look at it. The girl asks if this is the monster reference book. Brunei confirms that yes, it is filling up quickly, but it is still far from finished. The hunt will have to continue, especially since many hunters were incapacitated after the attack, and removing the guides is pointless. So she needs to terminate the old contract and sign a new one. The man asks if she agrees. He hands over a contract and asks her to read it and sign it. The young lady asks if he added anything strange. When she joins the squad, she always reads all the rules from beginning to end. The man replies that he doesn't understand what they're talking about, since it's only one page, and she can read as much as she wants. The main character does so, and then asks what it is, and what's with that weird part about hunting with Clive Winterlock himself. The man calmly clarifies what exactly is bothering her. The young lady replies that, firstly, she can hunt alone, and secondly, with her he is in much greater danger. The Duke says he knows of her ability to hunt alone. He realized this during Treaster's attack. He admits that Rain has the necessary skills and unique abilities, but still, she has no knowledge of the newest monsters, and these words make the main character angry and ask what he is getting at. The man explains that there are plenty of unknown monsters around, like the Tristers, and that a thoughtless attack could lead to injuries, and she needs someone who will tell her about new creatures. So this point is off the table. The young lady understands the logic, but is still afraid to take him along. After all, he can fall into eternal sleep, and now she is thinking how to explain this. The man says that if she doesn't like the idea at all, there's one option. The protagonist immediately asks what it is. The guy puts a pile of papers on the table and says that these are records of all known monster abilities. Everything is described there except for the methods of combat. If she learns it, he's ready to remove that section. The young lady sighs heavily, asks where to sign, and realizes that she is in deep trouble. At this time, the Emperor is in the palace and insists that this cannot be because the Duke survived. He asks if this is even possible and if he started hunting monsters. They tell him they have, and the blonde remarks that with such stubbornness, he certainly won't sit back. The interlocutor assumes he is protected by an order. His Highness replies that it's possible, but it's unlikely they are that powerful. He's certain the Duke is being assisted by someone very powerful. When asked about his guesses, he replies that there are too many. The entire empire is crawling with old rats who pretend to be loyal to the throne, but at any moment they can stab you in the back and drag that old man out of the grave. Or they'll start spouting nonsense like the Marquis of Lenin. The other guy asks if he's talking about a new generation. The blonde replies that it is not funny to spread rumors in the presence of the last of the Ashelanos family, although they have indeed died down. After this, he takes a red stone out of the box and says that it is time to visit the western border. He hands the stone to his interlocutor and orders him to find out who is preventing them from acting. The man in the cloak says that if there is a wizard there, he will notice him, because the waves of the stone are difficult to hide. The emperor replies that it doesn't matter, because after the truth, he will still fall into eternal sleep. At this moment, someone asks the lady if they can come in. The girl allows it. When the man enters, the young lady asks if there is a letter from her brother. The butler shakes his head and says no, after which he apologizes. The young lady replies that there is nothing to apologize for, and falls silent for a moment. The man suggests calling a doctor, but she says that everything is fine and it's just nerves because of that psycho. He wants to object, but the young lady immediately interrupts him. She repeats that everything is fine with her and it is just tension. And then there's the fatigue from work. She's surprised how her brother managed to do it all and says he'll get some rest so he can go. The man agrees and leaves. The young lady opens the chest of letters. She realizes that she reread her brother's letter every time she was worried, and it was pretty worn out, but it made her feel better. Despite her title as the Duke's deputy, it was difficult, as she was no match for Clive. In the letter, the brother addressed his dear sister and asked if everything was okay with her, since she was probably swamped with work. He asked her not to overexert herself. Meanwhile, the main character was fighting the monster, grumbling about how impudent he was and whether he even had a cooldown. The Duke doesn't understand what they're talking about, and the young lady advises them to forget about it because they've brought in an imbalance, and no one will ever buy such a game. The Duke pretends to understand, but he doesn't. In the letter, he wrote that he arrived at the western border and hired a guide named Rain. The main character dodges the fire and scolds the monster. The Duke suggests that Jigglester has a short neck and will not reach above his head. He advises taking a high place, like a tree. The young lady is indignant that he's only mentioning this now. She would just jump over it, but the guy replies that you can't jump over this monster. At that moment, the young lady rushes towards the monster and jumps, causing the Duke to become very worried. She lands on him and tells him that the stone is on the tip of his tail. Rain often does the unexpected, but thanks to her, hunting and training go smoothly. The young lady clarifies that the stone is exactly in the center of the spike and orders to shoot faster. The Duke fired, and the monster fell. In the letter, he wrote that the garrison was in poor condition due to a lack of funds, but the sale of paraphernalia had helped them survive. And in many ways, this is thanks to Rain, for which he is grateful to her. He often thinks how lucky they are to have such a guide. The young lady says they earned 280 gold pieces. The guy asks if that's really the only reason she's so happy. She replies that yes, because the monster hid for a long time, and they also got the scales. She prefers scales to claws. They're expensive and perfect for the black market. The guy says they found the money for repairs and won't split the proceeds. The main character replies that she will then remove every scale. The Duke smiles and comes over to help. She asks where he is putting his hands because the monster is still hot, although she is doing the same thing. The young lady says she's a pro, and he better watch his hands. She adds that he shouldn't interfere at all, but the man continues. The main character again says that it is not necessary and turns to the Duke. She admits that she was busy and didn't hear what he said before the jump. The Duke recalls saying that you can't jump over a monster, but she did it. And now the man is embarrassed and says it doesn't matter. The protagonist asks if this is true. He admits his mistake and offers to go if she's finished. Rain teases him, asking if Clive Winterlock himself was mistaken. He understands that the answer lies in the laws of physics, but says she doesn't need to know that. In the letter, my brother wrote that the start was slow, but he could return early, and asked me to say hello to the nanny and Albert. His sister thinks it's not easy for him there, and that's why he hasn't written for a long time. But it's still surprising. After all, Clive relies on someone else, although he has always managed on his own. And not only is it supposed to be, but he also praises her. The girl thinks about it. Who is Ella Rain? At this time, someone goes to the carts and thinks that money brings only troubles. The very presence of this guy makes him shudder, and he wonders who he is. Sometime later, a man is sitting in a tavern when a stranger approaches him. He asks if the carriage outside is his and offers to hire a carriage for 3 days. The man understands that the client is rich and asks the price. He is offered 50 gold pieces for 3 days, and the coachman is amazed by such a sum. The stranger tells us to go to the western border. The man warns us of the danger and asks for extra payment. The guy adds another 20 gold. The man stands up and says they'll work together. He clarifies whether they are leaving right now. On the street, he asks for his luggage, but is told that there is none. The coachman is surprised and asks what the gentleman plans to do for 3 days. He replies that he doesn't plan to stop anywhere. The stranger asks to take a replacement driver and drive without stopping. The man agrees, deciding that if they're paying, it doesn't matter. The guy suggests they leave. The driver says the passenger hasn't boarded yet, but the guy replies that's how it should be. He hands over a bag of money and urges them on. The coachman wants to object, but is told that they'll hire someone else. The man agrees, but later realizes that he shouldn't have refused right away. However, he decides to pull himself together, because it's 70 gold, and chooses the shortest route. After some time, the main character walks with the Duke and says that they did a good job. A wizard approaches them, and she notices that he is beaming, asking what happened. The guy says that the monster's attributes are simply incredible, and the results are amazing. The young lady says they can't even imagine and lays out more parts of the monsters. The wizard is surprised that there are fewer of them and that they are of different types, calling them gods. The main character adds that there is also red liquid and a heart, but first asks him to return what he hid. She mentions the fangs, reminding him of the agreement. The guy justifies himself by saying they contain a hallucinogenic poison. They start bargaining and agree on 80 gold. The guy calls her a miser. The young lady thanks him for the compliment and demands the fangs be returned, calling it a final warning. The boy looks at the Duke, who sighs and allows him to take one. The magician is delighted. The main character is angry and indignant that he is at it again. When the boy leaves, she tells the Duke that they've already discussed this. He replies that it's just one fang. She screams that this one has already been there 5 times. She warns him for the future, but looking at his face, she begins to stutter and thinks that it is unfair to do so. At that very moment, someone cries out, turning to the Duke, and demands that he move away from her because the mere sight of her, they say, spoils his eyesight. He continues shouting, reminding her that he already warned her not to mess with the Duke. They already have to hunt monsters together in dangerous situations. The main character asks irritably why he's yelling so much, adding that if he's jealous, he could just say so. After this, she invites the man to take a photo with the Duke, but he only asks in bewilderment what this word even means. Brunei intervenes and asks them both to stop, then turns to the captain and adds that he needs to tell Sir Haugen to edit the directory. The man asks if it is really necessary to do this right now, and if the Duke is trying to get rid of him in this way. The brunette looks at him as if confirming that everything is exactly so, and the man leaves with a dissatisfied look. The Duke turns to the young lady and asks about the letter. The girl replies that it's from Irving, and that he plans to reopen the black market in a couple of days. She adds that this may be the last collection. The handbook is almost complete, so some of the attributes may be kept, and the knights will sell them if necessary. The main character asks if they'll be going hunting at the same time tomorrow. The guy replies yes, but immediately thinks about the latest black market. He says he owes the lady an apology for what happened earlier. After all, he agreed to the magician's request without thinking, and did not take into account that the horns and fangs rightfully belonged to her. He promises it won't happen again. The young lady is silent for a moment, and the Duke asks what's wrong. Then she says fine and forgives him for the last time. The man replies that it's fine and leaves. The young lady sighs and thinks that this whole thing could drive her crazy. She even begins to wonder which of them is in greater danger. After some time, Haugen declares that the handbook is almost complete. This is significant progress, considering they initially thought the entire company would stay there. The Duke agrees. Haugen adds that this little huntress really helped them out, since even the captain acknowledges her. He says that she is, of course, abnormal, but good, immediately making the reservation that this is not quite what he wanted to say, and asks not to tell anyone about it. Haugen admits he's a little sad that the job is ending so quickly. He'd like to go home, but he knows they won't see the girl again once the case is over. When he thinks about not seeing her again, tears come to his eyes, and he himself did not expect to be so moved. The Duke also reflects on the fact that they will not see each other again, and reminds himself that Rain is only a huntress, hired as a guide. Returning home successfully should be a joy, but he doesn't understand why his soul feels so lousy. He can't figure out why he feels so incredibly sad. At that moment, Haugen asks if something is wrong. After some time, the main character is hunting monsters again. She shouts that there is no end to them and suggests that they first deal with those in front. After this, she instantly deals with them, and the Duke watches what is happening. The man is about to address the young lady, but she screams, pointing out that he has a stone monster right on his face. The man agrees and shoots. A short time later, the protagonist is already gathering materials. The boy asks what these gloves are. The young lady replies that the magician gave them to her for dispelling. These are gloves that are impervious to poison, acid, and heat. He's finally created something worthwhile, and she thought he was just lugging around paraphernalia. The Duke says he understands, and the young lady asks if she can keep the gloves when it's all over. The man thinks that everything will soon end and realizes that after this, they will not see the girl again. At this point, the main character asks Clive what he will say. He replies that, of course it's possible. The girl rejoices and admits that she's already mentally prepared to defend them with a fight, and if anyone's dissatisfied, they can go to Sir River, who they can even beat up. Then she says that's all and it's time to go back, because they need to make it to the black market. The guy mentions that there's talk about the market. He says the guys have expressed interest in joining and asks what she thinks about it. The main character clarifies who exactly suggested this and reminds that she can only take 3 people with her. It's him, Edmund, and the annoyingly clingy Wayne, whom she's forced to take. She emphasizes that no more than 3 is allowed, and the man agrees. After some time, the protagonist sees 3 people standing before her. The magician says he was told only 3 could go, so he will go in the Duke's place. The girl is surprised and asks what he is even talking about, and then wonders why the magician was there. The commander of the knights explains that everyone wanted to go so much that the Duke gave up his place, and the decision was made by drawing lots. One of the knights asks if the magician was cheating, but he assures that everything was fair. Someone else wonders if she's really taking 3 people with her. The girl realizes she's been misunderstood, and Clive is simply being overly pedantic. She explains that the squad captain is definitely going, and Wayne too, because he deals directly with the gang. The rest of us have no business there. After this, the Duke only looks sadly at the floor. The heroine realizes that, if she thinks about it, this handsome man is also out of work, and she says, okay, let them all go. She thinks how hard it is to refuse the sweet Duke. One day, Mr. Roca, an ordinary hunter, went hunting as usual with his troop. Unfortunately, he fell behind the group and found himself alone in a place full of monsters. Roca tried to get back as quickly as possible, but a monster jumped out of the bushes that he hadn't noticed. At that moment, Rain appeared and saved him, and since then he bakes local pies for her every weekend. And Roca isn't alone. The Duke tells the young lady that they've gotten a little too chatty. The girl replies that she knew it would happen this way, and had long wanted to put an axe to that idiot's gun, no matter how much they explained to him that the black market is illegal and not just a night market. The man says that things will get even more fun, because the black market is not at all like the regular one, but the young lady replies that she doesn't even want to think about it. Brunei notes that at least these stories are interesting, since not everyone is often called a hero. The young lady says that she didn't want to save him, he just found himself in front of a monster who was going to put him into eternal sleep. That's all, and she prefers to keep quiet about the pies altogether because it's hard to eat knowing that there's monster meat in there. So she's no hero and didn't help out of the kindness of her heart. The Duke asks what difference it makes what prompted her. For some, this is important, but for most only, the result matters. So regardless of her motives, everyone is grateful to her for joining the squad. The young lady asks if it really doesn't matter what motivates her, and thinks that he knows about her impure intentions, especially after her too loud delight. The guy replies that he thinks so, and Wayne thinks so too. The main character is a little embarrassed. She thinks it's so unexpected, like she was swept away by a tsunami. This feeling is unfamiliar to her, and she finds herself thinking about how beautifully he smiles. She thinks that this really can make you go crazy, and that beauty is harmful to your health. Soon they come to the black market, and the main character says that they are there. Someone immediately asks Rain if she has ever been to such a cool place without them. Sharon confirms this and says that she feels betrayed, and the young lady once again reminds that this is not a night market, but a black one. She says it doesn't matter and suggests they move on, but warns them not to call each other by their real names. They move on, but suddenly a man appears in the middle of the market. He declares that he's finally found her. The protagonist gathers everyone around and asks them to listen carefully. She reminds them not to use their real names, to pull up their hoods and keep them on, because the people here are strange. Wayne will stay out of it. It doesn't concern him. The others can take a look around. Edmund will go with her since it's important for people to see her representative in person, and the boy agrees. She then turns to the Duke and reminds him that he wanted to send the letter. and he confirms it. She tells him to send a letter and buy everything he needs, and they will meet outside the market in an hour. She warns that the skinny guy without front teeth is ripping you off. The little guys in hats are pickpockets, so you need to be careful. And finally, she asks him not to follow anyone who tells him he's handsome and sweet. The man replies, of course, but then, shocked, asks what she's talking about. The young lady says they can go then. The Duke understands that only she could have said such a thing. Another knight says he's in shock. The Duke tries to say something, but the blonde man declares that this girl clearly has 9 lives, since she dares to lecture the Duke. He can't understand it, and the brunette just sighs, glad that he didn't notice anything. He then suggests that they break up and meet in an hour, asking that they not reveal themselves, and everyone agrees. One of the knights notices that the gentleman is acting strange today, and is probably not used to such places. The blonde man wonders what they're unhappy about and can't understand how they can be so clueless. The wizard asks what Miller is talking about. He asks if he doesn't like being lectured, and the other knight replies that it's possible. The blonde man realizes that the gentleman blushed because of Rain's words, sighs, and decides not to talk about it anymore. After a while, someone turns to River and asks why he is so gloomy. They ask him if he's sad that he wasn't accepted into the black market. The man asks if they're talking about him. Haugen says fine, and trusts him, then asks why he's fighting with the huntress every day. River yells back that it's because she's acting like an idiot. The man then sits down next to his colleague and looks at the letters in his hands. He asks if they are from Mrs. Offelli, but is told, oddly enough, that they are not. Haugen is surprised that she hasn't written yet, and the man confirms that this is true. All the letters are bills from builders and messages from wounded knights from the village, but none from the duchy. He questioned the messenger, but he insisted that all the letters from the capital had been delivered. The man then speculated that something might have happened to the messenger from the duchy. He cries out that there are no letters even from Maria, although she always leaves them with the city merchants. If not him, she could at least write to Sir Miller. Haugen asks if Maria is his wife, since she often writes to Miller about budget matters. The man says that this is precisely why it is strange, because she was obliged to write. Besides, the Duke sent a letter every time he visited the market. The interlocutor agrees. If the lady had received them, she would have sent a reply long ago. They both think about it. Has something happened in the capital? At this point, the Duke turns to the merchant and says he wants to send a letter. She names the price and asks for the address. The man says that the letter needs to be sent to the Duchy of Winterloch, and the girl is visibly surprised. The Duke asks if there are any problems with this, and hears in response that there are plenty of them. They explain to her that letters are not delivered there now, and it can be said that no one takes on such work at all. She wonders why a simple monster hunter would send a letter to this place, since they can't help anyway. The guy immediately heads off somewhere, wondering if something serious has happened. He urgently needs to finish all his business and return to the capital, so he hurries to Rain. At this point, the girl says everything went perfectly and the deal is closed, then asks the commander if he saw how to proceed. He replies that he understood. The young lady's influence is truly great, and he decides that from now on he will sell the paraphernalia only in this way. The guy remembers how she put a dagger in front of the merchant and told him to give a discount to anyone who showed it. The man then asked if she was talking about a representative and if they had hired a dog since things were going so well. The girl replied that it was not a dog, because the dagger was herself, and there was no point in arguing with that. The guy just smiled and asked how a dagger could even be her representative. At that very moment, the main character threw a dagger at the wall next to him. The boy turned pale, and the young lady said she hadn't heard and offered to repeat it again. He immediately jumped up and quickly assured her that he would treat the dagger as if it were her. The girl said she liked the way he was thinking, and the man added that he was glad about it. After some time, the border guard captain admitted that it looked quite creepy. The young lady replied that otherwise they would be constantly fleeced, and it would be better to show strength right away. She notices that the Duke should have returned by now, and then she sees a guy hurrying. The girl says that their nobleman has returned, but notices someone else and asks if it is the color red. The commander asks if everything is okay, and Rain replies that it is a mage, and asks about Valiant. The man says he doesn't know, and asks if they're talking about Lance. The girl replies no, because behind the Duke stands a mage in black with a staff and a stone. The guy is confused about what she is talking about, because he doesn't see anyone, and Rain is surprised. She wonders who it is then, because it seems to her that she has seen this guy somewhere before. A thought flashes through my head that this could be a mage from the end of the abyss, whom no one had seen before Ophelia appeared in the palace. It was after this guy that the main events began to unfold, when he began to make plans with the prince. The girl is puzzled as to why she stumbles upon him here, far from the main characters, and decides that anything can happen in the world. She understands that before only Ophelia could see him, and she cannot understand why now she can see him too. The girl is thinking about what to do next and how to act in this situation. The commander asks if she is okay, and she asks Edmund for help. She orders people to be kept away, and if she tries to put any civilians into eternal sleep, to stop her. Rain says it's not difficult and that she's counting on him. The guy, confused, asks what not difficult means. At this point, the main character screams out that she needs to sort this out immediately. She hopes that everything will work out, because if she solves the problem now, it will be easier later. But the thought of failure scares her. Suddenly, someone grabs Rain, and the girl immediately turns around and strikes. After a while, everyone gathers together, and the blonde man asks Sir Sharon what happened. He replies that he doesn't know, since he returned with him. The guy then turns to Wayne and asks what happened between them. The magician looks at the axe at his feet, and the young lady turns around. She says he escaped. The blue-haired boy claims that Rain suddenly attacked the wizard, but luckily missed. Someone is surprised how this is even possible, and another admits that he doesn't understand it either. The wizard understands that there was definitely something there, and magic was used, which means Rain must know something. The Duke asks the young lady to come to him upon her arrival, because they need to talk. The wizard understands that there was a misunderstanding, and the girl replies that she also has something to say. At this time, the crown prince is sitting in his office and examining precious stones. Suddenly, knights burst into the room and put daggers to his neck. The emperor appears before him and asks if he really thought of undermining him. He shouts that this is cheating and that it's all funny, because the guy won't succeed. He adds that one day he will meet the same fate. The guy only sighs and laughs. Then the blonde takes a knife and wounds himself, and then, as if by accident, knocks over a glass of wine. The glass falls and breaks, and the guy calmly takes back the 3 crystal balls. At that moment, they announce that Ophelia Winterlock, the Duke's second in command, is waiting in the guest room. He tells them to tell them he'll be right there. After that, he looks at the red stones. Meanwhile, the main character enters the Duke's office and asks what he wanted to talk about. She notices that he is frowning and probably still puzzled by her attack on the wizard. She remembers that the wizard has the ability to become stronger near strong people, while the weak begin to feel discomfort. She realizes she was thinking too much and says that there was a misunderstanding and she didn't mean to attack Lance. The Duke asks if it was someone else, and the girl confirms, and then asks in shock if he really saw him too. The brunette replies that he didn't see anyone, but he's sure someone was there, and Rain asks how he knows that. The Duke says she was looking too hard in that direction. He adds that he thought about her ability to see magic stones, and judging by her reaction, it is something similar. The main character asks if this means he didn't call her to scold her. The guy replies that he doubts she would listen to him, but it is still important for him to know what really happened, and he asks the question directly. The girl wonders how much she can tell Clive, because the question seems simple. She knows that the main villain is the one who carries out the orders of the crown prince and skillfully manipulates him. This is a powerful, dark magician who will eventually destroy the country. But to the Duke, she's just a monster hunter, and she doubts how much truth can be revealed. If she says too much, Clive will become suspicious. At this point, the Duke asks her to tell him exactly what it was. Looking at his face, the girl realizes how hard her heart is beating. She says the magician was frighteningly handsome and dressed all in black. The Duke doesn't understand what she's talking about. Rain explains that he was wearing a black robe from head to toe and was holding a staff similar to Lance's, so he was clearly a mage. She decides that's enough and adds that she doesn't know where he came from. After all, it disappeared, as suddenly as smoke. The guy asks again if she's really talking about smoke. He remembers sitting at a bar recently and asking Leon if he was okay. He replied that yes, and that it was better than lying around in the mansion doing nothing. He then asked Clive if he had heard the rumors, and when asked in reply, he said that the crown prince was supposedly enveloped in black smoke. The Duke then considered these to be empty rumors created to undermine the authority of the royal family, but Leon insisted that he saw everything himself and that it was terrible. He said he didn't blame Clive for not trusting him, but the sight of it sent shivers down his spine. In a trembling voice, he admitted that he did not know whether it was a man or a monster, but the smoke moved eerily. At that time, The Duke was only worried about his friend's strange behavior and did not attach any importance to the conversation until he realized that this was their last conversation, because the black smoke turned out to be connected with the Crown Prince, and the friend who had experienced this died, and Clive had to go to the border for the funeral. It was only a matter of time before the connection between the events became obvious, and if it was the same as what Ella was talking about. So it was His Highness who sent the smoke to the black market, and the target was his life. Clive clutches his neck and realizes how ridiculous this is, because all his life he has protected his family and country, considering it his duty. But now he can't protect his country or his loved ones, and his own life is under threat. He recalls his friend's words, that the country can no longer be saved. At this moment, the main character turns to him and asks if she said something wrong. The brunette replies no and apologizes. The girl says no and asks why it shocked him so much. She asks if he knows this mage. The man clenches his fists, and Rain realizes that he probably does. And if he knows him, then he also guesses about the Crown Prince's involvement, so his shock is understandable. The guy apologizes for the late conversation and says that he just wanted to ask about this, so she can go. But the main character replies that no, because she also has something to say, and she wanted to wait until tomorrow. However, the matter is urgent, people's lives are at stake, and she declares that she will go to the capital. The brunette is surprised and asks where, and she repeats that she's going to the capital. The girl asks if this is really the place where monster hunters can't get to. She knows that hunters are considered lower class and are not allowed into the capital with the royal palace. She understands the logic of such views, because hunters butcher disgusting monsters for the sake of life. They dig through their bodies for good, and it may seem cruel, but isn't it ironic? After all, they receive fair pay for their work, and the materials from the monsters are used by the residents of the capital, despite their disdain. The blonde adds that the reason for such discrimination has always seemed absurd to her. Perhaps this is what they call discrimination. The brunette apologizes to Rain and admits he was stupid. The young lady replies that he has nothing to do with it, since he wasn't the one who passed the laws. But the guy says that he still shouldn't have said that. He sincerely asks for forgiveness, and the girl replies that she didn't expect that getting to the capital would be easy. However, she has important business there, so it's essential to get there. The guy is surprised and asks if she really has a reason. After this, the main character says, of course, since she needs to put the mage into eternal sleep, causing the man to immediately cough. The girl wonders what's wrong with him, since she didn't say anything strange, and he replies that it's just not the usual way to express oneself. A short time later, His Highness announces that the boy has finally arrived. The young lady notes that the capital is full of mages. They'll surely know where he's headed, and then she'll be able to hit him with anything from an axe to a pot. Honestly, if it weren't for Lance, she would have already checked if a physical attack worked against him. But the moment was clearly not right for that. The brunette wonders if she's seriously planning to put the mage into eternal sleep, but immediately decides that it sounds like nonsense. However, then he remembers that the girl has already done what was previously considered impossible, and if it is Rain, then anything is possible. The young lady calmly says that even if he cannot take her to the capital, she will still achieve her goal. The guy replies that he knows this, and suddenly realizes that it doesn't end there. It is too early for them to say goodbye, and he hands the lady a paper, inviting them to go to the capital. Even this thought calms him a little. A little later, His Highness says again that the boy has finally arrived. The man in the robe remarks that he must have great news to be smiling like that, and the boy confirms this. He says that Ophelia came to him yesterday evening herself, was tormented by nightmares, so a doctor and maids were assigned to her, and now she should get better. The man in the black robe mockingly asks if he's talking about the doctor, since the prince is the source of her woes. The man replies that's precisely why he's treating her, and Ophelia will soon recover. The blonde calls the reaction boring, and then asks who is helping the Duke, and whether it is the Marchioness Cecilia Lennon, the Viscount Ingray, or one of his father's old soldiers. But the man in the robe says that none of them were there, and the blonde man asks again in surprise. The interlocutor replies that only Clive Winterlock and the Winter Knights were there. The blonde demands he not lie, and asks if that's all he can say after using so many magical stones. The robed man replies that he will only speak of what he saw himself, and there was no one else there except him. After these words, the guy throws the vase in a rage. He screams that it's a curse and can't understand how the Duke even survived. At this point, the wizard remembers the main character. He thinks that it was thanks to her that the Duke remained alive, and what's more, she was able to notice him even without detection magic. Until now, only one person was capable of this, and now he needs to know more about this woman. Meanwhile, the main character is in the Duke's office, and he says that first they will send several knights to assess the situation in the capital. If she puts together everything she has seen and heard, something should become clear, and the young lady agrees. She then adds that she needs to find out how Ophelia is, and the Duke confirms that this is important. He suddenly stops and asks the girl to wait, and then asks if he told her about Ophelios at all. The young lady replies that she overheard the knights talking, worried that Lady Ophelia was left alone in the capital. She realizes she almost said too much. After that, the girl says they can finish the encyclopedia anyway and go upstairs. The man replies that she's done a good job and can rest. The young lady agrees, and the Duke adds that they need to come up with a way to get the hunters to the capital, but the girl believes that this is not necessary. The brunette is surprised and asks if she has an idea, to which she confidently replies that she does. She suggests simply talking to a passerby and borrowing his pass, and then having an equally sincere conversation with the guard. The brunette declares he'll definitely find another option. A little later, River comes into the office and says that the gentleman has been busy since early morning. Seeing the Duke's condition, he asks if he hasn't gone to bed yet and receives confirmation that there is too much work. The commander says that he should have been woken up, but the Duke replies that he has another request. He wants the commander to lead the knights tomorrow and be the first to return to the capital. The commander, shocked, asks why so suddenly. The Duke explains that the situation in the capital is tense. The collection is almost ready, and it is important to check everything as soon as possible. The commander agrees and says he'll assemble a detachment, preferably made up of young knights. Clive nods and promises to finish the paperwork. He also asks to look at another document, and the commander asks what it is. The brunette replies that it is a contract, which makes him loudly surprised. The Duke explains that he composed it at dawn with rain, and decided to take her with him to the capital. The commander, astonished, asks why this is necessary. Outside, the knights exchange glances and wonder if someone just screamed. The other one replies that it doesn't matter now, because rain will come out soon and he will definitely find out everything. He thinks about what she talked about with the Duke at night, and then he sees the girl, getting ready to greet her. But, noticing her bad mood, he immediately hides behind another knight. He whispers that it's better not to ask anything now, and the interlocutor agrees. The main character sits down and says that she has a splitting headache. Haugen approaches her and says the news has already reached him. The young lady is surprised that he learned everything so quickly. The man asks how she is holding up in general, and asks her to report immediately if the commander starts to be rude. He also notices that she looks exhausted, and the girl replies that she is simply not getting enough sleep. She adds that it is because of excitement, and the man asks if she is afraid of punishment for hitting the magician. The young lady replies that she was actually going to deal with someone else, and the magician simply intervened and his head is intact, so there will be no punishment. Wayne is surprised and says that he thought she was kicked out of the squad and asks why she looks like that. The girl replies that he misunderstood and that she simply slept poorly. She was so excited that it was impossible to fall asleep. But at that moment, someone ran up to her. He indignantly shouts why she is going to the capital, and the blonde replies that she was talking about something important, but she was interrupted. The commander clarifies whether this means that she is really going to the capital and is going to do what she said earlier, and almost send the crown prince into eternal sleep. The young lady replies that almost, but not quite. One of the knights notes that it is worth listening to the opinions of the capital's residents. The Duke at this time finishes the letter and realizes that only official documents remain. He recalls the words of the girl from the black market, that letters are not delivered there at all now. The brunette thinks what an idiot he was, because if the magician that Rain saw really is close to the crown prince, then who knows what awaits the knights. He recalls the commander's words that the knights' entry cannot be prevented, even if the crown prince himself is involved. They have found a pretext to cross the border, and the Duke only hopes that everyone remains safe. He goes to the window and sees the main character, thinking that this is really amazing. She spoke so easily about dealing with the magician, and at the same time mentioned that he was frighteningly handsome in black. The Duke can't help but wonder if this mage really is that handsome. A little later at the meeting, someone remarks that this man has already been dismissed 3 times, and is surprised by his behavior. Another aristocrat asks him to speak more quietly and asks if he hasn't heard the rumors yet. They say that Athelia Winterlock herself visited the imperial palace, and the crown prince personally takes care of her. Someone asks if the duke has fallen into eternal sleep, but another replies that the estate is trying to suppress rumors to avoid land grabs. Some speculate that the estate is hoping that Ophelia will come to her senses, but no one knows for sure. At this moment, the marquise gets up from the table and heads for the exit, and someone is surprised that she is already leaving. One says that all this makes one feel uneasy, and the other replies that nothing can be done. A little later, the woman is already sitting with someone at the table and says that Athelia Winterlock seems to have come under the wing of the crown prince. She adds that she sincerely feels sorry for the girl and is surprised he even caught her eye. Meanwhile, the guy admires the aroma of the drink. The woman calmly clarifies that it is alcohol, and the guy immediately spits it out. Marquis says that in the current situation in the country, it is simply impossible to stay sober. The crown prince is hiding in an unknown location. The black smoke is shrouded in mystery, and therefore one has to think about new allies. The woman asks if the guy found what she asked for. He replies that yes, points to the map and says that he was able to follow the route to this place, but then the trail ends at the western border. It seems the huntress changed her name, and the only distinguishing features that remain are her light hair, tall stature, and rough character. Finding a person by such signs is not easy, but if you expand the search to neighboring villages, there is a chance. The marquise notes that the duke's affairs are also taking a strange turn, although formally this does not concern her. She praises the guy for a good job and says that finding out what happened 3 years ago was not easy, but the result is worth it. She orders that surveillance be continued and any news reported immediately. After all, this girl could be the only hope for the rotten empire. Meanwhile, the main character stands next to Wayne. He says that it all looks strange, and the girl clarifies what exactly. The young man replies that residents of neighboring villages have come to the camp again, and, it seems, are asking for help again. The main character is surprised, since this usually happens once or twice a month, but the guy clarifies that this is already the 5th request this week. She is amazed and asks what kind of monsters have appeared, and the boy lists the attacks, including hundreds of Italy in one of the villages. The young lady is stunned to think that monsters themselves are really so brazenly invading villages and feels a strange sense of déjà vu. They turn to her and ask if everything is okay with her, and she asks if Clive has arrived, explaining that she was just thinking. She suggests that they hurry because they only need to catch one, and then go to the capital as quickly as possible. Wayne wishes them luck and asks the knight what kind of monster it is this time, and is shocked to hear about the 5 quarry. After being cleared to travel to the capital, Rain and Clive set out to hunt for the last monster in the book. But 3 days later, the girl irritably wonders where this creature went. She is indignant because Palig is only level 3 and does not understand how he could disappear like that if he is the only one left. She reads out a description of the monster: tall, snow-white, foul-smelling, with a terrifying roar that can be heard from afar.